Yeah. I'm sure your employer will be listening to this.
Oh yeah. I told him about it and he was way excited. You know, he's a big bagpipe nerd like me. No, I'm just joking. But it just kind of keeps the, you know, when I open up my Gmail, because my work uses Gmail too, and so it just automatically opens up my work instead of my own.
Yeah, that
so
way you can keep things separate.
It easier to separate things.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm getting more and more into Firefox all the time lately. I've been trying. It's hard for me. Look, John, let me tell you. I'm just gonna like unload my emotions on you right now.
Okay, go.
I was raised in an Apple household. I also a religious household, and I'm not joking when I tell you that I equated Steve Jobs with Jesus Christ and equated Bill Gates with the devil when I was a child.
Oh, dear.
Which, of course, now having read like Steve Jobs' biography and knowing about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, etc., I'm kind of like, maybe I had that exactly backward. But you know, as a kid, like we were like Apple and that's it. There is no reason to use anything else. But this was, you know, late 80s and early 90s.
That's funny.
And that was before Apple. Apple's is...
So basically the only thing cool that Apple had was just like the Mac.
Oh yeah, that was it. That was it. All they had was the Mac. Yeah, it was just a computer world. Yeah.
And so basically like it was just the basic same non-internet computer functions, but just slightly easier to find things.
Exactly. That's all it comes down to. Yeah, absolutely. and single click mouses, which was never an issue until I started playing Warcraft, and then I was like, I need a right click. This is
my
gonna.
Gosh. I grew up on Warcraft 2 and
Yep,
Warcraft.
me too.
Like, I mean, I said Warcraft. I never played Warcraft. Are you talking about like the map, like the multiplayer one? Like I'm talking about like the 90s. Okay, I was a teenager in the 90s, and I'm talking about Warcraft. And like, I went over to my friend's house, and we hooked up our computers together. Like, with a cord.
I did that with my cousins.
Like on the other side of the table, and we're yelling at each other, and you know.
That's the way to do it, man.
It was so fun.
It's so much fun.
And Warcraft 2, like, I'll tell you what, like, back before the age of distraction that we live in now, all you needed was like to sit there and click on the peon like 20 times and hear all the things he said, and that entertained us. Like,
yeah. Did you get the cheats for Warcraft 2 so you could have it play like the Why Do You Keep Touching Me Warcraft rap and stuff like that?
No, I didn't know.
Oh, that's worth looking up,
I was
man.
totally into cheats on other games, like if they had them. I mean,
yeah, I remember. If I remember right, the code was disco, and then it would play this alternative soundtrack in the background, and it was this medieval-inspired Warcraft-themed rap song, and it was excellent.
I had a love-hate relationship with Warcraft and Warcraft 2 because, like, I liked the game, I really did, but my friend was just so much better at it than I was. And like he would just joke around with me, like, and he would play with me, like he would like get me to think that I was winning, and then like this huge force would just come out of nowhere and just annihilate me, and I could never beat him. I don't know what the deal was. And
well, we're good.
He's still my friend to this day, so we're gonna maybe see if it's like online somewhere and we can go back and play it, because I never really got into the next generation of games, like the online games and stuff. I kind of got out of games, but so I'm kind of like a 90s. I'm stuck in the 90s with my games. So
we're good therapists for each other, because I had exactly the same experience with my cousins. They were both far better players than I was, but I still loved playing it a lot. And that Warcraft 2 battle chest with the expansion pack was the first game that I ever bought with my own money at Comp USA.
Yeah, and I think I may have bought a few little games before then, but like the big one of my, like, I didn't do a lot of bad things as a teenager. Like I was a pretty good kid, but like one of my biggest, like, and it wasn't even like a rebellion thing. It was like, you know, when Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2 came out.
Oh yeah.
Like, so I grew up in Orem. Like I grew up in, you know, a religious family too, and so the predominant religion of our area. So
yeah.
And like, of course, parents didn't want you playing Mortal Kombat. Like, just the thought, like, ripping some guy's head off and the spine's dangling there. I mean, it was
right, that gratuitous violence.
But like to kids our age, though, it was like like you can actually do that. This is
right,
like
nothing cooler, man.
This is like the coolest thing ever. And so, like, I saved up my money, you know, my summer job, and me and my friend, I finally had enough money, and we got on our bikes and we rode to Media Play. Remember Media?
Oh
Play?
yeah.
And I bought Mortal Kombat 2. I know I had one. Wasn't as
what was
cool
the platform? I don't even remember. Was it Nintendo or Sega Genesis or what? What was it on?
They had it on both.
Okay.
But like I was a Nintendo kid.
Yeah.
And so I kind of missed out on the blood of Mortal Kombat 1 because if you remember, like Nintendo, they took out all the blood.
Right. Yeah.
And so like it was still cool, but like we were jealous of all the Sega kids because they had all the blood.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not. Like, my parents aren't going to buy me a whole Genesis just so I can get blood on Mortal Kombat. But then, when Mortal Kombat 2 came out, like, then we were, like, on top of the mountain because it had blood, had better graphics than the stupid Genesis.
Yeah.
And it was just, like, the best thing ever. Like,
yeah.
we were just, that was a good summer. So.
Well, I'm sure you remember when the Mortal Kombat movie came out.
Oh yeah, we watched it. Oh yeah. It was way cool.
I remember watching it for the first time. It was like on TV. It was like on Fox 13 or something, like with commercial breaks throughout and everything. And like I was watching it like in secret because also my parents wouldn't have, didn't want me watching such terrible filth, And,
I mean, to this day though, like I would go back and I would watch that. That was like total nostalgia. I mean,
oh yeah.
Like Liu Kang was like, I mean, so like in the 80s into 90s, like martial arts was a big thing in movies, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some would argue that it might have been like Karate Kid couldn't have happened if it weren't for the environment that already existed.
Well, like, are you talking not the original Karate Kids? Like, you're talking about like the series now, the Cobra Kai?
Oh, I'd imagine that Cobra Kai couldn't because like Cobra Kai couldn't exist if the original. Yeah, I meant the original. I'm a
huge fan of Karate Kid, and that came out, I think, what was it, 84, 85, 86, somewhere in there.
Yeah, last half of the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, I grew up on those movies. That was kind of like my alternative religion. Like, I was a Karate Kid, and that was like around the time Ninja. So I was born in 81. So like. Toward the late 80s, like Ninja Turtles were the thing. Yeah. And so I got into karate, and that's kind of fun in a funny way. Not in a funny way, but just that's totally connected to my how I got into bagpiping as well. And I'm sure we'll get into that.
That's absolutely a perfect trend. I'm going to hold on to that for later. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like way into karate and loved Karate Kid, loved Ninja Turtles. And so naturally, when Mortal Kombat came out and you could like, see blood everywhere and do like terrible things to people. That was just like the natural extension of my childhood obsession. Natural, and then
not to mention that soundtrack,
growing into your like rebellious teenage, martial arts obsession, right? And I feel bad for the kids now because like they don't really have good karate stuff. I mean, and like Cobra Kai came out, but that was more so like for all like the people of our generation that liked Karate Kid for nostalgia,
Yeah, definitely serving us, not for the kids, that's for sure. Like, by which I mean like it's not appealing to my children. It's like it's only for my nostalgia, really.
Yeah, well, it's not really like a kids show either because there's so much like adult stuff in it,
Yeah, it's clearly made for people who are in their like 30s and 40s, right?
Right, but I ate it up, and I binged both seasons, and my wife did too.
Yeah.
Wait, so they've done 2 seasons, right? Yeah. No, 2 or 3?
I think only 2, but I'll be honest with you. I did not finish either season. Like I got started with that. I was like, okay, I get it.
It's good. I mean, maybe you're not as karate nerdy as I am, but like I ate up the whole thing. I loved it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's powerful nostalgia, and that
it really. But the thing of it, it wasn't just the nostalgia. Like it actually stood on its own, but then it put in just enough of the nostalgia to make it tasteful and not like, oh, okay, they're just trying to make money and just doing it only with nostalgia. Like the angle that they came at with bringing Johnny back with William Zabka, like he was really good. And that was a compelling character because they totally flipped it around. And then you're almost like rooting for, it's almost like the anti-hero, right?
Oh, totally. I definitely got that feeling like, okay, I don't like the Karate Kid himself anymore. Like I like the bad guy now.
Yeah. But then it kind of, you see how Daniel is perceived as like this kind of arrogant jerk.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah.
And he's like this rich guy now and owns this car dealership, has like this $1 million house. And yeah, so like you're rooting for
And
bad guy.
what isn't his car dealership like Bonsai Cars or something like that?
Yeah, and so everywhere he goes, he gets to see the reminder of like who beat him in the tournament. And he can't like, I like who he's like living in the 80s still. Like he doesn't know what the internet is.
Right, yeah.
He knows what it is, but he doesn't really know how to use it.
Right.
He doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't have Facebook. These kids basically have to teach him how to like live in this century, right?
Yeah.
And he's still driving like that old Trans Am and listening to the 80s rock and watching like Iron Eagle and
yeah. Did this new series reignite the passion of martial arts within yourself? Are you back to the dojo?
It's like it's kind of a generational thing. Like I'll always be a martial artist, and I actually went through and I did it for many years. I got my black belt, and like that's a part of me that will always be a part of me, but I haven't actively trained for many years. And
yeah.
It's kind of one of those things where like as an adult with, you know, a family and children and responsibilities, it's like I think it's important to do some things for yourself, but you can't like just do everything, right? You kind of have to pick and choose. And I've kind of picked to hold on to continuing my piping passion and obsession. And the martial arts is like still part of me, but I think I'm going to like relive that through my kids because they're getting to the age now where they really want to start taking karate. And actually the guy that taught me, which will tie into my bagpiping story, like also he still teaches. And so I'm going to have my kids go to the same guy who taught me starting when I was like 8 or 9 years old. So
right. So I was aware of you because you're a very good piper before I think we spoke, but I don't know if we'd ever met when
if we did, it was just in passing because I don't recall like I'm kind of the same. Like I've known of you because
we know a lot of the same people, of course.
Yeah, we do know a lot of the same people, and it's a small bagpiping world, so that's inevitable. But I actually was pretty close. I mean, was or am to a lot of the people that you know very well. And so yeah.
Well,
kind
including
of those things where, well,
go ahead.
You know, you're around these people, but like you don't know everyone, right? Right. You recognize their face, like I'm sure I've seen you.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
or you hear their names at the at the announcement table and stuff.
I think like I really started becoming more aware of you when two things, like when you were your stint as pipe major of Garden Valley. So like I kind of associated you with that, and then also because I'm a gigging piper like you are, so I was aware of your online presence as far as like getting gigs and stuff, and so I'm like, okay, this guy's trying to get gigs too, so so we're enemies. No,
that's right. Yeah. and this is here's the cutover for the Karate Kid situation.
It's just kind of a competitive market, though. I mean, but like
so which of us is Cobra Kai? Which of us is Cobra Kai?
Well, my name is Johnny.
Okay, so there you go.
That's just a natural fit. I'll be the bad guy. So.
Yeah, well, and so of course one of our mutual friends is our dearly beloved and much missed Zach Lees. And one of the first times that I became aware of your tie to karate was when at the Pacing Games a few years ago, Zach and Diana had run the piping competition a few times down there. And Diana thought it would be really fun to have, like, are you familiar with the show MXC, Most Extreme Competition? Or like, what was that one called? Wipeout? It's just like ridiculous, like just like silly obstacle course competition, basically. But
not that exact show. I mean,
but you get the idea, right?
Yeah,
You've probably seen something similar.
Right, I've seen other shows.
Yeah, so a lot of the entertainment for these shows comes from like this ridiculous commentary that is played over the competition. And so they thought, it'd be really funny if we had like a couple of basically like Statler and Waldorf kind of characters sitting off to the side of the competition circle, giving like commentary, but it's like totally made up, ridiculous commentary. And so totally they had, yeah, totally does, right? Fits. So they had Zach's big brother Cody and I a couple years do this. So we just sit there and like, make up fake sponsors for each band, in between bands coming out, be like, and we'd make up stories about the band members and the bands themselves as well. And so one of them,
I think I remember some of this. Yeah.
Well, one of them, like some of it we would just make up on the fly, but some of it Zach gave us like little hints ahead of time. I think this might have actually been it was probably the same year that Zach got into some trouble for submitting Eric Avenhouse's name as one of the people who had passed away that year, and so he was read out. His name was read off.
I don't know how I heard this. It may have been brought up on one of the episodes that I listened to, because I did listen to about a dozen or so. So I think I don't remember it when it happened, but I do remember hearing this story.
Well, one of the things that he gave me was Johnny knows karate, and I wasn't sure which Johnny it was or anything. So just as your band came out, and I was like, and ladies and gentlemen, look out, because Johnny knows karate, and that was my first. So then when you and I started talking, I was like, oh, he learned from Joe Perry. Well, now that actually does make sense. He actually does know karate.
Yep, you're making the connections. Yep.
So tell me about that, maybe. How did you find Joe Perry? Joe Perry, of course, he's got what's his dojo place? What's his training place called in Norham? Is it just called?
So for years and years, it was United Studios of Self-Defense, and that's a national chain, more prominent in like the Western U.S. But like he's been teaching since he was 18 years old, full time.
Right, I understand he was born in Ireland, but he went to China and trained there, right?
No, he's not born in Ireland.
Oh, I thought he was.
No, but he has Irish heritage.
I see. Well, close enough, right?
Well,
we were all born in Ireland in one way or another, weren't we?
There is another guy in the band who, I don't know if he was born in Ireland, but he has a house in Ireland.
And he goes and plays with the band there, right?
Well, he instructs. He's like a really good player. I mean, really experienced, really good setting up bands and tuning, and so he's been instructing them for a number of years. But the problem is that he goes to Ireland for the summer and he plays in a band over there. Well,
right.
I think he just retired from the band and retired from his career and everything. So I think he was actually going to be moving over there on a more full-time basis.
Oh, not over here, huh? Because that would have been nice.
Yeah, I know. That's going to be a hit for the band for sure.
And that Joe's band used to be the Mountain Timpanogos Pipe Band. Now it's the Thomas Cordner Memorial Pipe Band.
Correct.
And his dojo is now, do you know what it's called now?
It's called Perry's Martial Art.
Okay.
So he decided to branch off. I mean, since he was basically so experienced, I mean, he had been teaching for so long, and I think it was just one of those things where like he just, instead of kind of taking orders from the higher ups, he just decided to branch off on.
Just want to do his own thing.
So I think and then he also has the yoga studio.
Oh yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
He has like a strong connection to the Indian culture, and he's very he and his wife both are very passionate about yoga, and they have a nice little yoga studio there called the Yoga Shala.
So Joe Perry is a piper. I know he also plays uilleann pipes with his Irish band.
Yeah.
So he's got a Highland pipe band, he's got his little Irish group, and he's got a dojo. And you met him via martial arts, right? Not via bagpipes, or was it the other way around? That's right.
Yeah. So it was probably around 1989, I'm guessing. And this kind of dates me. I just turned 40 in January. I was born in 1981. So I don't remember exactly. I'm just basing it off of the first trophy I ever got for martial arts was in 1990. And I know I was a purple belt. So I'm guessing I probably started in like 89 or so. And so Joe was pretty young at that time. I mean, I think he was about 20. He had been teaching for a couple of years. So he was just a young kid. But in my mind, he was the coolest person ever. I mean,
that's the perfect age to be like the ultimate role model, right?
He was like my hero. And he's kind of been like a mentor figure for me like throughout my life. I mean, through the martial arts, through the bagpipes, and I kind of got into yoga a couple years back, and like it's just kind of, he's always been there in my life as like a good friend and kind of like I don't know if mentor is the right word, but like in a lot of ways, yes.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to get an interview with him, and so you just keep going, and I'm going to send him this episode and say, hey, do you like my show? Will you come on it?
Yeah. Yeah, and he takes bribes too. No,
right.
No, he's a real. He would be a good interview, and he would have a lot of fun stories to tell about his story.
For sure.
Yeah, so he's still a good friend, and I don't see him as much as I have at times in the past, but I still just helped him tie on a bag a couple weeks ago, and I still, I live close, so I pop in, and we still associate. In the last few years, I have kind of gone back, even though I haven't been like a full member of the band, I have played a number of gigs with them and kind of helped them out when they were a little shorthanded on a number of times.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Our small band joined together with their small band to go and do their. They always do that.
The flag thing.
Yeah, the flag thing. So we went and did that with them.
Yeah, Joe told me
it was nice.
That. And I think I did that the year before, but I couldn't do that one, and so. Yeah, he told me that he got together with some of you guys as pipers. I don't know if you were there or.
Yeah, I did go. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
Yeah,
the gig was fun, and also they're just a fun group of people for sure.
Yeah, they really are, and and it's changed a lot over the years. But as far as who's in the band, but there's like the few pillars, like there is in any band that kind of remain through the years.
Right. Yeah. So do you remember being aware of bagpipes before entering his martial arts world, or did you become aware of bagpipes through him specifically?
Well, I mean, so bagpipes weren't a significant part of my childhood. I mean, like I didn't come from a piping family. The only real recollection I have is that my mom loved bagpipes at the parades, but it didn't really resonate with me necessarily. I didn't really think anything of it. So I don't really have any early memories of piping or like wanting to be a piper as a small child. And even when I started martial arts, this would have been a couple years before Joe started on pipes himself.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He probably started about, I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing 4 or 5 years before I did. Mm-hmm. And so like the early to mid 90s. And I started martial arts like say 89 or 90. So he wouldn't have even been a piper at that time. And I'm not exactly sure. This is not a story that comes up a lot between us. I'm not exactly sure what his piping journey was as far as how he came to the pipes.
Well, hey,
I know who his instructor was, and I know who his early band was and stuff, but I don't know what drew him into the pipes necessarily, other than Scottish heritage.
Well, this can be the teaser, tune in the future to hear Joe Perry's origin story.
Perry. Yeah, that would be interesting to hear for me too. So, yeah. So kind of what happened was as I took martial arts for a few years as a child, and at one point when I was in about, I'll say 5th or 6th grade, I broke my arm. I broke my wrist and had a cast on for a while.
And I don't mean to derail the story, but what kind of, was it karate, jiu-jitsu? What kind of martial arts, or a mix of various styles?
The style is called Shaolin Kempo, and it's kind of, I mean, it's a complicated history like most martial arts. I can't say that it's just like pure traditional karate or kung fu, but like it has influences of a lot of different martial arts. So there is a Chinese kung fu influence, but that kind of comes out more as you get more advanced. And without getting too much into the weeds, like when you start off, it does resemble more so like a traditional karate. And so like the belt system is similar to karate, like the gis are similar to karate. So, and it does have an interesting history, which I'm not the biggest expert in, but I do kind of have a understanding of, but just for our purposes, it's a good like mix of a lot of different martial arts influences. There's some jiu-jitsu in there. So like we do grappling, or karate, kung fu, like, so I think it's a well-rounded martial art, but I'm biased because that's the one that I learned. So.
Of course, yeah.
Everyone says their martial art's the best, right?
Right. Yep.
And as a kid, that used to be fun to like talk to your other karate buddies that were in karate with you and talk about how like you could totally beat all these guys from this other stupid karate studio.
See, when I was a kid, I did some wrestling, but I never did like anything like karate. But I do remember those conversations, like like trying to rank like which one was superior. Like Wing Chun is down at the bottom, right, and then like karate is up higher, and like jiu-jitsu is always like vying.
But the funny
for
thing
position.
is like I never like said Wing Chun was at the bottom because I always associated Wing Chun with Bruce Lee. And it's true that like Wing Chun wasn't quite as cool because he didn't have like all the flashy kicks and all that stuff. But like but that was how Bruce Lee got started before he kind of branched off and formed his own style. And so I always associated that with Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee, of course, was like the martial art, that's, I had Bruce Lee books and studied up all about him. And
yeah,
I thought he was, he was obviously before my generation, but still lives to this day, as like the greatest martial art artist of all time. I mean, I don't know how he would fare today in like the MMA world, where it's like the style now is so much more tested as far as like actual combat, right?
Yeah. Well, he did have he
so
had
different than
he had bulging muscles that I don't even like, aren't even in my body. So he probably would have been okay, but still, yeah, who knows, right?
I mean, pound for pound. I mean, that term is thrown around a lot, but pound for pound, like, it's hard for me to imagine in my mind, and I'm sure I've built him up greater than what he really was, but like, it's hard for me to imagine anyone like really beating him pound for pound. Right?
Yeah. But I do remember those conversations on the playground, like, which martial art are you doing? Well, which one are you doing? Well, this one's better because of this. Well, this one's more pure because of that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But how did you break your wrist?
You know what? I'm going to correct that. I did break my wrist, but that was later.
Oh, gotcha.
I think that was a little bit later. So I broke my ankle jumping off of the monkey bars on the playground at recess. And so what happened was I didn't, even after it healed, I kind of didn't really get back into karate for a while. It's one of those things where like you just, once you stop, it's kind of, maybe I didn't get going. I got into other things. I started playing more sports, and, I just kind of, not that I totally lost interest. I still liked it, but I didn't really get back into it for a while.
Yeah.
And so then fast forward all the way up into so past junior high, I didn't do karate. And then come high school. So I don't know what, just for like reference, like when did you graduate high school? Like what generation are you in?
I graduated high school in 2007.
2007. Okay. So I'm quite a bit before you. So I was,
we're like 7-8 years apart, something like that.
Right. So like what my teenage years is more like your childhood. So anyway, so Scottish culture all of a sudden had this huge resurgence, and I don't think I have to explain it to anyone that's my age, but with the movie Braveheart.
Of course, Braveheart, yeah.
And I know that sounds really cliche to say that, and I'm almost embarrassed to even say that Braveheart caused me to start piping, but like Braveheart totally, like, it just struck a chord with me, like, and
it did with a lot of people.
The Scottish culture, like, I just started doing a deep dive into it. I started doing book reports on research reports on the Battle of Bannockburn and William Wallace and all this stuff,
Yeah.
And I started discovering my own Scottish heritage that I never knew about, probably because I just never cared about. It's not like not like it was hidden, but I'm like, oh, do I have Scottish? And my grandparents had this old genealogy book, and I found, like Scottish ancestors that came over, like with the Mormon pioneers and all this stuff. And then like that was part of my story. So I really just started resonating with it, and the sound of the pipes on that movie was just so amazing. So that was the first bagpiping that I really was exposed to, where I really it just resonated with me. I listened to that all the time, and of course I know now obviously that wasn't even Highland pipes, but at the time it was just such a beautiful music, and it just so emotional. And I'm like, and I don't honestly know at what point or what thought I had that, to make me think I want to play this instrument, but okay, I'm going to go back. And so at this point, I did know that Joe played bagpipes, because I actually did go back to karate for a little while during that period where I said I was taking a break. I went back for a short time, and so my first real exposure to hearing bagpipes in person, other than like in a parade or whatever, was, so we used to do these karate retreats where we would go up to the mountains, and this particular one I think was up. So we would hike up Rock Canyon to Rock Canyon Campground.
I love that canyon.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places. And so we would hike all the way up, and then we would camp for like 2 nights or whatever, and we would call it just a karate retreat. We would wake up in the morning and do meditation and like Tai Chi, and we would have masters fly in from like California or from out of state and just do these like teach us these things that we wouldn't normally learn about. So like this was like a really cool experience and as a martial artist, it was one of the highlights, you know. And so by this time, Joe was early on in his piping, and I wasn't really interested in it at that time, but he did. In the mornings, he would stand up on the picnic table there at the campsite, and he would play his bagpipes. And I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't really think much of it, but
that canyon is so echoey too. I bet that was really cool. I haven't never done it, but I definitely plan to someday take my pipes to that canyon just for the sake of hearing it bounce off those walls.
So I wish I could say that like, oh man, I just heard it and I just knew that I had to play, and it was like this instant connection. But honestly, like I just was aware of it. Like, you know. And it wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 that I really just became obsessed with the pipes. Like, and so by that time I did know that Joe played. And so the first Scottish festival I ever went to was the Payson one. And this was before I had a chanter or anything. And Joe was there. And I remember he was all dressed up, you know, had the jacket, he had everything, and he was doing some solos, and I didn't know the grades or whatever, but like I just saw him and he had a medal, and it was just like the coolest thing ever. And it was that time, maybe slightly before, that I kind of knew that I was going to do that. Like it just hearing the pipes there that day at the Payson Scottish Festival, and I don't know, just struck a chord, and I probably rode my bike to media play.
Once again.
And I remember looking for a bagpipe CD. Of course, this was before everything was online. Like they had the internet, but it was just very, you know, much in its beginning.
This would have been the media play that was over there on what state? Is it University?
University.
Yeah. I used to go to that same store all the time.
Yeah. I loved that store as a kid. It was so cool. They had all the video games, all the cool stuff. And anyway, so I knew they had any CD, you know, there. So I went and looked for bagpipes. I looked for probably an hour until I found, I think it was like 48 Highlanders of Canada or whatever. So it was basically like the Canadian military regiment.
So you got lots of marches and Amazing Grace.
But I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I didn't think of myself as like a nerdy kid. I definitely wasn't like the coolest kid ever, but I wasn't like a nerd.
Hey, you did karate. You couldn't have been that nerdy, right?
Not that nerdy, but but like, this is going to make me sound really nerdy. So like, I just got that CD and I was so obsessed with it. I would drive around. Okay, maybe I drove there because it must have been 16 because I had my license. And I remember driving around with the windows down and just blasting bagpipes.
Don't worry.
Thinking I was like so cool, you know, being at the red light and just like blasting the bagpipes.
That's exactly what Zach and I did down in Payson at that age too. So don't worry, you're in good company, man.
And it doesn't really even matter what other people thought, because in my mind, I was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I even got my friend on board, and you know, and he kind of thought it was cool, and I almost like got him to start too, but you know, he ended up taking a different path. But anyway, he was on board, at least driving with me down Dragon State with the bagpipes blasting. And we didn't get any girls that way, that's for sure.
Weird, you'd think, right? It's never made much sense to me why the girls don't get quite as excited about a guy who listens to bagpipes.
Yeah, I don't know, and it didn't even necessarily. Yeah,
my wife tolerates it.
Yeah, and my wife is really sweet too, and she appreciates it, and she definitely supports it, and she does appreciate it. But I mean, it's not like obviously her thing. So she's not just like listening to she's not like listening to Field Marshal behind my back or anything.
Right, or like she doesn't like ever like wake you up and be like, hey, go play your pipes for me.
Yeah. Although, like, she does think it's cool. So if there's ever an opportunity for me to play pipes at a certain thing, like where she's like, oh, you should get out your pipes. You should play your pipes.
Yeah, like family get together or something.
Yeah, like she will encourage me to do it. So it's not like, she definitely thinks it's cool in that way.
Yeah.
So she's supportive of that. And she definitely has supported all of my piping endeavors. And of course, you know, it's always the tricky balance of like, you can't go overboard, you know, you have to balance life.
Oh yeah. I've experienced those kinds of ups and downs so many times already. Yeah. But between kids and a job and everything else. And all spouses of pipers and drummers deserve a medal just because it's a time demanding and costly pastime for sure.
Yeah. definitely like starting out a little more costly. Yeah, for sure. But then like, hopefully you get to a position where you can kind of at least pay for your piping hobby.
That's the gigging, man. Yep. It's just an expensive hobby that pays for itself if you're doing well enough.
And yeah. So I don't want to get too sidetracked. So
sorry, carry on. Yeah.
I got into it. No, so
you got your CD from Media Play, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so by this time I definitely knew I was playing, and I hadn't really approached Joe yet, but it was in my mind. I knew I was going to, and so I knew that there was this Scottish store in Salt Lake called Edinburgh Castle.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it.
And that was the type of thing for me that was just like so cool, because you go in there and see all the Scottish stuff. They didn't have like just online Scottish stores. You know what I mean? Like they probably did, but like it wasn't the same as now. And so you'd go there and just be like immersed in all this Scottish stuff, and it was
the neckties, man.
Oh, I had that. I got like a family tartan.
Yep.
And I got that from there, and I had that for many years, and until it was finally just too out of style. I don't know why, but and so I got here's the thing, is like it was kind of expensive still.
Yeah.
And I was still kind of a poor kid, and so it was like getting closer to Christmas, and so I had my mom buy it, and I was going to get it for Christmas. And it was just like the practice chanter with like the RT Shepherd
right
thing, and it came with the audio cassette tape.
Yep.
And so this is how I was going to learn, and in my mind I was going to like kind of show myself some of the basics before I like bothered Joe to go teach me, right? Because I wasn't like really associating with him too much at the time, so I wasn't like seeing him all the time. He probably would have said, "Oh, let's just get you started the right way."
Right,
so,
of course.
In my mind, I wanted to like know a little bit before I went and asked him for lessons, and so I remember like waiting for Christmas, and I was just so like, I think every kid's probably like snuck their Christmas presents at some point, but like I remember we had this motor home. And I remember, like, I found where it was, and I remember I got a tape player that had batteries, and I went out to our motorhome, and I just remember, like, I spent literally hours and hours and hours on end, like, hiding in the motorhome, like, trying to figure out how to play, like, the scale, and, you know.
That's so funny.
Basic grace notes, like, from this book, and.
If that's the kind of naughty thing my kids do, man, I'm going to be so pleased.
Well, the funny, like, I think my mom kind of was keen. I was kind of aware of it.
Yeah.
You know, I think. But it was more so like, well, your dad's going to want to make sure that you probably just got this for Christmas and didn't cheat too much.
Sure.
I don't know. So I can't remember all the details. Like, it wasn't like really like this thing I thought I would get in trouble for.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I think my mom was just so pleased that I actually wanted to learn an instrument. And I was like totally self-motivated. Like, no one asked me to. Like, totally took them completely by surprise. No one in our family played pipes. Of course, my mom, that was her favorite part of the parade, but we didn't go to Scottish festivals growing up, you know, like it wasn't like part of our growing up. So
sure, sort of a passive enjoyment. Like when it came to you, you would enjoy it, but not going out of your way to find it.
So needless to say, I mean, it completely took them by surprise.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I didn't know about like Payson High School. It wasn't like our high school played bagpipes, and I always knew from the time I was a little kid. I've listened to several of your interviews, and that seems to be like a common thing. It's like, well, I always kind of knew that I was going to play pipes, and the high school had a band, and so I started taking the junior high class, you know.
Yep. And to be fair though, that's partly influenced by my sample size, right? Or my sample group, right? Which is my friends from Payson. So, you know, that's to some degree, that's definitely a part of why that comes up so much, but yeah.
So anyway, at some point, so after Christmas, I did eventually go to Joe, and he started teaching me, and I eventually, you know, got a set of pipes, and I bought a used set, and luckily they turned out to be good, and they served me well for a few years.
Do you remember what kind they were?
Yeah, they were Gillanders and McLeod, and I didn't know anything about brands at the time, but that was actually a good brand, and they sounded good. They ended up cracking a lot, but so I couldn't quite afford the set that I wanted, because my instructor played a set of nails, and back in the, like, I'm sure we'll kind of get into more of the nitty gritty, but I'm a total bagpiping nerd. Like, I know all the bands, I know all the I know the brands of pipes, I know the reeds. Like, I'm just
If you weren't a nerd as a teenager, you've embraced it fully at this point, right?
Because like there's no like consequences for me being a piping nerd now. It's not like I'm not going to get the girls. I'm like I'm already married. Right?
You already got the girl.
Yeah. And so.
So bring on the bagpipes in the Warcraft 2, right? Set up the LAN. Yeah. I'm already married. Let's do it.
Yeah. So well, probably not playing as much video. Like probably getting out of video games has probably helped me stay married. I mean,
yeah, I know what you mean there. Yeah.
But, anyway, I don't want to go down that way, but because I don't want to insult anyone who still loves video games, because I understand the passion. But so.
Well, what band were you playing with when you first started?
Well, so yeah, that's interesting. So like at the time, Joe wasn't really playing with a band. So he came from a band called A Caradu, which is the Black Sheep, which is just.
Were they local?
Yeah, they were. And
I haven't heard of them.
Yeah, they. By the time I started, they were no longer together. And,
I see.
And I think may have been like a shorter term type of thing.
Yeah. And that happens, bands.
I don't know like how fully established they were, but they did evidently compete a number of times. According to the stories I've heard from Joe. And so by that time, there was no band, and so.
And so actually, what are we talking? Like mid '90s or so?
Well, yeah. So I think the Christmas of '97 is when I finally ended up getting the chanter officially, even though I had probably started a couple months earlier on my own,
And I could be wrong, but I think that's about when White Peaks down south of you was established. I think it was about that year.
Yeah.
But maybe it was a year or two before. But then, so like what you would have had available would have been nothing in your immediate vicinity in Orem, right? It would have been up to Salt Lake for the closest band.
Right.
Probably Utah Pipe Band.
At that time, like playing
maybe
in a
Salt Lake
band.
Scots.
At that time, playing in a band wasn't even necessarily in my consciousness as something that I obviously wanted to do. It was more so just like I want to learn the bagpipes.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was going to go to Joe because I had such a good history with him, and he was the only piper that I knew of. So
sure, yeah.
So it was, in my mind, it was more so just like I'm going to learn the pipes. And so when I first started off, that's what it was. And he gave me a good solid foundation and the fundamentals and got me started in the right direction for sure. And I just remember so I had that CD that I still listen to a lot, but once I started taking from Joe, like I think he had some recordings that he let me borrow, and like a tape of the 78th Frasers live in Ireland, and I listened to that, and I'm telling you, that blew my mind. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with that album, but like after just listening to like Rowan Tree and Scotland the Brave, and Bonnie Dundee,
and those are great, of course, but if you weren't aware of what else could be done,
right? But listening to this, and this is for me the first time hearing like a grade 1 band, but like this is probably what the rest of the piping world kind of went through, because when they came out with that CD, like the 7/8 Fraser Highlanders were trailblazers. Like they evolved the medley into what it is today. Like before them, it was pretty much, they might play like an MSR, but instead of playing like big 4-parted tunes, they might play like some shorter 2-parted tunes put together, and then maybe like a slow air that was nothing special, and then just like a couple jigs to end, right? Like, yeah. And I know that sounds like what a medley is, but they're the ones who really started playing the round style reels, like adding all the crazy harmonies, doing the waltzes, doing all the innovative stuff. And
probably to some degree the sort of more, what'd you call it, maybe like more advanced medley construction, where it's like a relationship between each tune and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the key signatures were all planned. Like, so you had Bill Livingstone, Bruce Gandy, Michael Gray, John Walsh, like all of these huge piping figures were just brilliant minds, and they're all composers, and they all contributed to the music that was going on at that time.
Were they all in that band?
They were.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Dang. That's like the freaking all-star team there.
Well, yeah, and so like on that CD, like Bill Livingstone has a Pembroke solo that he does, but Bruce Gandy has a solo, William Gray has a solo, and Bill Gray, and that music was just amazing. Like I couldn't get enough of it. Like, and I think it was at that point that like not only was I like into piping, but like I was obsessed with this higher level piping, and I was just drawn to that, and I couldn't get enough. And so he gave me a CD of SFU's Alive in America, and Carnegie Hall hadn't quite come out yet. That came out in like 98, or so that was like around the time I was, getting started. They were kind of doing the Carnegie Hall thing and stuff. But the album that he had was Alive in America, which was recorded in 96 after they won their first championship in 95. And that CD also blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I became an SFU fanboy. I mean, Jack Lee had a solo on there that he did things that I didn't even understand. Like, I didn't have enough of an understanding of the scale and the embellishments to even understand how it was humanly possible his fingers could move that fast. I had no idea what he was doing, but I just knew.
Well, and this was audio only, so you weren't able to see his fingers. Yeah.
And I knew that, like, that is what I wanted to do. Like, and so and Alan Bevan, Andrew Bonar, they had solos on this, and I just became kind of a fanboy with it, I was obsessed with SFU. He gave me a Gordon Walker Pipers of Distinction tape. And I remember one lesson we had, he just had me play that. He said, go home and play this and just don't listen to the melody notes, but just listen in the background try to hear the grace notes that he's doing. And I remember it just being so so mechanically perfect. Like you would just
it's like a computer, right?
It was just crazy. And I started hearing what was going on behind the melody.
Yeah.
And so these recordings really helped me kind of get ingrained in my mind what I knew it should sound like. And I think that's important. And that I don't currently teach, but I've done a lot of teaching in the past, and that was always part of my right from the get-go. Like, I have an extensive collection of bagpiping albums, and that would always be like every week I would send them home with another CD just to listen to, just to kind of, I think that's so important, just to get it cemented in your mind, like what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, what are you going for?
And I think it's easier nowadays with YouTube, obviously.
Yes, that's
everything
with my students. I usually send them home with a link every week. But
yeah. And so when I was coming up, there was no YouTube, and so like you pretty much just had a few albums, and you really just listened to them over and over and over again. And so even to this day, like I appreciate what we have now, but it's almost like you don't appreciate it because it's just anything you want to listen to is out there, right?
Right. You don't have that experience where it's like, here's this album, now I'm going to listen to it 400 times over the next 3 weeks.
You developed like a personal, intense relationship with that music.
That's
right?
so true, yeah.
And so like now I go back and listen to that album, and like memories just come flooding back of like the thoughts that I had when that just inspired me, right?
Yeah.
And that's all I had, right? And so to this day, like I don't listen to piping music like daily or anything like that. But I mean, I obviously still enjoy it, and I'm obsessed with it, but like it's, for a number of years there, it was just like, that was all I listened to. I mean, that was just my music, and I never tired of it. And
I know what you mean. There's a band called Brother that did an album called Blackstone Tramp. Mm-hmm. There's the Wicked Tinkers Hammered and Loud albums, and Victoria Police's Master Blasters.
Yep.
Those 3 albums are 3 that I really devoured for years and years as a teenager. That
James, I'm really happy that you remember that it was Victoria Police, not Velavath.
Yeah, that was really awkward. Okay, I know I'm never gonna live that one down.
I'm just joking.
Actually, I'm glad I brought it up here just so I could set the record straight. I do know that was Victoria Police.
I remember like listening to it, screaming like, "No, Victoria Police!" Because that was another one that maybe came into my consciousness a little bit later.
Yeah.
But still equally important into that like early development. It wasn't like one of the first, but it was one of in the first years, So.
Yeah. But yeah, I can definitely relate to this. Like I do feel like I have a personal relationship with those 4 albums in particular because I listened to them to death.
Right.
And it's like, it's evergreen too. It's not like I'm sick of them. Those are still my favorite albums to go back and listen to.
And I'm going to throw in on top of that, like a few like folk albums. Like I remember because whatever Media Play had, you couldn't just go to like the Piper side and order.
Right. Yeah.
There's obviously no iTunes. So it was Battlefield Band.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And Tannehill Weavers.
Yeah. Those are great bands. Yeah.
Yeah. And great piping too.
Yeah.
And so I was exposed to those bands early on too, and had a couple of their albums, and that was in the mix of just piping that was on repeat, and like they're phenomenal. I mean, they've had different pipers over the years, but like the pipers that they had at that time, I don't think they've had any bad pipers, but the piping was phenomenal. And fast and cool and fun and mixed in with the other instruments. And I just thought it was the coolest thing I've ever heard too. So
having heard you list all of these bands and individual soloists, and the fact that you knew probably everybody knew that what we were talking about was Victoria Police in that one episode, but all of this together, what was it that you told me that Bob Worrell once said to you? You got to tell me about that.
Yeah, so this was playing with Wasatch and District. This was a workshop that we were at. He came into Salt Lake, and I just remember Bob Worrell, of course, anyone who's into piping and listens to the Worlds, I mean, he's kind of like one of the main piping figures, right? And
we all know his voice.
And he has stories, right? That's kind of what he's known for. He knows everybody. He's kind of had a connection with every tune, with every, I mean, not everything, but like he just has a story for everything. And so he was at the workshop, and he'd start into this story, and I just couldn't help myself. Like I should have shown more restraint, but like then I would just blurt out, oh, and that's this and this and this and this and blah. Oh, that's Donald Cameron's powder horn. Oh, that's Fiona McLeod. That's Donald McLeod's daughter. Like all this stuff. And he just like looked at me and smiled, and he's like, are you? I can't even remember the exact words that he said, but like basically the accusation that I was just like this huge piping nerd, and that's coming from Bob Worrell, who knows everything.
What are you, some kind of piping nerd?
I kind of wore it as a badge of honor,
Yeah, as you should.
Yeah, Bob Worrell, if he thinks I'm the piping nerd, and so like it's kind of funny because it's kind of more of like a myth now. It's like, even people in Wasatch and stuff, I'll get random texts from people like, where can I find this tune and this tune and this tune?
Yeah.
And like, it is true that I do know a lot, but like ever since I've started my family and got, like basically grown up into an adult, like I'm not like going through piping books like every day, you know, like, and so like, I would say like I used to know a lot more than I do now, and so
maybe you don't have as much of an index for every like Ross Ainsley or like Lincoln Hilton tune. Like maybe the knowledge kind of starts to taper off a bit, but still,
exactly,
you're still a bagpiping nerd, man.
Yeah, and so I sadly like have to like let some people down, like and tell them I don't know.
Yeah,
but I definitely still qualify as a piping nerd, and I do like I know the piping world pretty well, and I know all the brands and reeds and pipe brands and all the top bands and most of the top players. Like I'm just kind of, it fascinates me, the whole world of piping. It's kind of our little niche world. I still claim some session there, and
well
the passion's still there. It just has to be manifested in like a slightly more balanced way, where I can't come home from work and then tell my wife, oh, I'm going to go, listen to Field Marshal for 7 hours.
Right.
Whereas like when I was single, I did do that.
Yeah. So you started playing, then you hear these great recordings from Joe Perry that make you, maybe those made you think I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my words here. Did that make you want to play with a band, hearing that big band sound?
I can't really recall. And like, honestly, I thought like eventually I would play in a band. It wasn't like really in my ambition to play for a band right away. But then early on, so it would have been, I have even the dates here. So like, this is kind of the history of the whole band that eventually evolved into become the Mount Timpanogos, now Thomas Cordner Pipe Band, which sadly most pipers in Utah probably aren't even aware exists, because they're not like a prominent competitive band.
Right. They don't compete much, but
right. But so like and that's kind of how most bands are aware of other bands, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
for the most part. So in 1998, there was a Celtic concert at Mountain View High School, and so by that time, a piper named Ian White had moved into Utah, and I'm not exactly sure where. I think it was from Alaska. I think I can't remember exactly where he moved from, but I think he was born in Australia, but he kind of grew up in Alaska. And anyway, he was a very good piper, like extremely knowledgeable. Like his actual piping skills weren't that of like an open level piper, like his hands, but his knowledge, like of piping history, and I like really put mine to shame. And so he probably taught me a lot about like the Donald McLeods and like the history of like what a gold medal was, like the Northern Meeting, like the Glenfiddich, like the actual nitty gritty of like the piping world and like what the top level was, right? And so anyway, so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but so Joe Perry was contacted to see if he could get together a few pipers for this band, and so he brought in his instructor, which wasn't currently in a band anymore. Like he played together with him in the Black Sheep Pipe Band, Gary Hall, and then another piper who you might have heard his name, Gareth McMillan, who kind of came up through like White Peak's route for a while. Anyway, and he was kind of like a hotshot young piper at the time, about a couple years, maybe like a year or two older than I was. But and then somehow, I don't know how they got connected, but somehow you got connected with this Ian White who had just moved into Orem, and so somehow the four of them got together and kind of just formed like a little mini band with no drums or anything, and put together a set of some tunes. And I actually have this on VHS somewhere. I attended, and I was heavy into my lessons at the time, and I think I had just got a set of shuttle pipes or something. I think, oh wait, or my Highland, I can't remember, but like I was still basically in practice chanter, like transitional,
just transitioning,
pipes, you know, yeah. And so like I wasn't like able to play at this thing yet.
You got to dig that VHS up, man. We got to get this stuff on YouTube.
I know.
That belongs in a museum.
No, I totally agree, and I've had that thought, and I do need to dig it up, and I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere at my parents' house still. And
let me know if you need any help. Yeah. I've got all the equipment to convert VHS to digital. So.
Oh my gosh, I have so much that could, like SFU concerts when they came to Utah. And I'm getting ahead of myself again.
Okay, we'll talk after.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this stuff there is no other recording of.
Yeah.
And I kind of heard that this is one of SFU's better concerts. Like, anyway, we'll get to that because that's another part of the piping story. But like, I don't know how much. Okay, how long are we going to go on this? I mean,
carry on. Tell you what, my kid has a birthday party to go to in an hour and a half. So.
Okay. Well, we won't take that long, but because I just looked down at the clock and we haven't even really got far into piping, and it's like already.
Well, we had to leave room to talk about Warcraft 2 and a little space for media play.
Okay.
So
I don't know if anyone's going to listen to this to get past all that stuff. So, I mean, maybe people our age, will appreciate that.
Right.
But, well, I'm older than you, but like in our same realm of generation.
Yeah.
Like you were a 90s kid, I was a 90s teenager.
Right. It becomes more the same thing. The further we move into geriatric territory, the more we're just the same thing. So.
Yeah. I mean, I had the big 4-0 milestone a couple months ago, so I'm quickly moving there. And so, well, so this Celtic concert at Mountain View was the origin, and several other connections were made at that time. A harpist by the name of Gerald Dick, who kind of made a connection at this concert, became a piper in the band, started learning pipes. At least another Irish dancer that kind of made an association at this band, because they put out a little booth, who wants to learn pipes, or whatever. They got several numbers, and several, I don't know how many, but at least 2 or 3 other pipers that kind of eventually were part of this formation of this band kind of came out of this concert. And so it was after this, some very casual meetups were kind of just put together where like, hey, let's start learning some of the same tunes. And this was the origins. And I don't remember all the details, but Ian White, I mean, he was a very polarizing figure, and like he came across as basically like knowing everything and this is the right way to do it, right? And some people took issue with that, and I'm not going to name names, but like other people that are strong personalities that might have that same tendency to think they're right on everything. And so like his name kind of got sludged through the mud a little bit. But I will say that he did know a lot about piping. Like he knew a lot about setting up the instrument, getting a good sound, reeds, playing well, like the fundamentals, like he was excellent at. So he kind of became the de facto leader of this little group. And there were several, I mean, it kind of went through an evolution, and I don't need to bore people with all the various stages, but at one point it kind of became loosely, this little informal group started growing, you know. Several people were became attracted to Ian, even from other bands that started taking personal lessons with him. And they kind of started coming to these little informal meetings. And the little group started growing and started getting a few other gigs here and there. And I remember like my first gig with the band after I was up on pipes would have been with this little group, and it would have been about 5 or 6 pipers with no drummers. And so we started doing a couple little things.
And Joe Perry, right? He was part of the group.
And Joe Perry. And so the kilts at this time were all mismatched, just like bring your own kilt. And I had borrowed a kilt. I had found a kilt to borrow. And so by this time, shortly after this, I had kind of started getting into doing a gig, with the band. And so I was quickly progressing. And so I'm not sure all the details, but somehow it became loosely affiliated with BYU and became like a BYU piping club.
Okay, yeah, I've heard echoes of this.
Yeah, and there was kind of like the intent that we were going to maybe get some sponsorship from BYU, and
I've even seen I saw some sheet music, like some Xerox sheet music once that said like BYU Pipe Club or something like that on it.
That's so funny how like the sheet music makes circles around.
Yep.
I mean, I have sheet music from so many different bands, and many of them predate like even my getting into piping.
Yeah.
And each sheet music could tell a story, but like, it's you're right though. Like, and that was the iteration of the band for a little bit, and we started meeting at BYU, and they gave us a room, and at that point I didn't really care about like the politics and like the the nitty gritty of like the club and like getting sponsorship or like
you just wanted to make music, right?
I was just learning tunes, and I was just loving piping, like it just and so I know at some point that it changed and that didn't quite work out, but by this time we were bringing in many other like pipers from other bands, like particularly like several from the Salt Lake Scots, some from White Peaks, like, and they were taking lessons from Ian, and they were coming to these little informal meetings. And at this time, it wasn't really like a threat to other bands necessarily, because we weren't anywhere near like having uniforms or drums even,
right,
competing. So it was just kind of like, hey, this guy knows a lot about piping, and he can really help us, and he just kind of had that kind of leader personality, we all kind of just kind of defaulted to him as Ian White, and I kind of say this with hesitance because like and I don't want to say anything negative, but like I think we quickly kind of understood that like maybe some of the stuff he said wasn't, we kind of took some of it with a grain of salt. Like he liked to exaggerate stories, kind of make things, and I think we all do it to a little bit maybe, but he maybe took it a little farther than some. But,
well, and I'm sure there's something to be said for like sort of the psychological phenomena of being in a place where you've never lived before, and so it gives a person sort of like, you have more freedom to do that kind of thing, and so it's easier to slip into that.
And so like I just want to be careful, like I'm saying this in a public forum. It's just like I'm not criticizing him. He was actually a very good mentor to me, teacher to me, taught me a lot. And I am grateful for everything, that he contributed to my piping journey. And so, So I don't really have too many more details other than we were bringing in other pipers, and some of them really good. And another piper that was kind of prominent in my kind of getting passionately into the competitive side of things was Ian Crane, which was a longtime piper. I'm guessing he was maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. So I maybe even less, maybe like 3 or 4. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But so he was coming in, and he was a really, really good piper, like really good. And I kind of formed a quick friendship with him, and he kind of started mentoring me, and we, he kind of became like just kind of like this guy that I would go to and play for, and he would help me get better, and like kind of more informally, not with like formal lessons.
Yeah.
But like I heard what he was doing, and it was more so though his passion. Like he just has such a passion, and his goal was to get up to grade 1. This time he was like a grade 2 soloist, but he was like a top grade 2. Like winning everything, right?
Yeah.
And he just had such a goal. He wanted to get up to grade 1, and the way to do that. So he told me, he's the one who kind of taught me about like what it meant to do solo competition. So fast forward to like the next year. So I've got like a whole nother year of experience. Haven't done any competing yet, but 99. So the early part of 99, I don't remember what month exactly, but like around January to February, somehow. So one of the pipers that was kind of involved with this little BYU pipe club thing was Jim Detjen, who was another phenomenal player, like grade 1 level. And somehow, I don't know, to this day, I don't know how this happened, but somehow through connections or whatever, like they made it happen to like SFU came down. They brought a mini band down to BYU, and they did a concert in the Wilkinson Center and then weekend workshops. And to this day, like I pinpoint those workshops were so formative for me, not necessarily for what I learned, although I still do several of the things that I specifically knew I learned at that workshop. But it was like, for me, with what I've explained to you, with how obsessed I was with piping, with like these CDs, and these were now like my rock star heroes, right?
Right, yeah.
And so getting to meet these people, like to do workshops with them, like my first real exposure to, part of my journey is like really becoming passionate about Pibroch, which is the ancient traditional classical music of the pipes. And so I had been exposed to it a little bit before this, but I could pinpoint the workshop I took with Alan Bevan there in 99, really going through and learning my first Pibroch. But like, it wasn't even really what he taught. It was just learning it from Alan Bevan, who is now the current pipe major of SFU, but who's been with the band since 96, I think. And he is just a phenomenal player. Like, I just looked up to him so much, and I was a total fanboy. But like, here I am, like learning from him, talking to him, asking him questions. Like, it was just a dream come true. And like it was just really fortunate because I wasn't in a position to like go start traveling to like do all these like other workshops out of state and stuff, but they just came to my backyard.
Right.
And all of a sudden here's Jack Lee teaching a workshop.
Yeah. How do we get that to happen again, man?
Yeah. Terry Lee, Neil Dickey, who's probably best known for many of his tunes, like The Clumsy Lover. He was a longtime piper in SFU. At this time, I don't think he was an active piper with SFU, but still a very prominent piper. And he has been one who has emceed all of SFU's concerts going back for many years.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly what I was thinking. I think that I know his voice from some albums. Yeah.
Right. And so, but he is he's a very amazing piper in his own right. And so I remember taking like a hornpipe class from Neil Dickey. And like, I mean, just these, I can't even put into words like what this experience meant to me. Like, but then hearing SFU, and this was just a mini band. I can't remember the number of pipers, but I'm guessing like 8 to 10 with like a smaller drum corps as well. And this would have been in the Wilkinson Center. And hearing that sound just pierced me. Like, I mean, I've heard it on the CDs, but if you have, to any of the listeners, like if you have not been out of Utah and heard a grade 1 band in person, like there is nothing like that sound, and it does change you. Like,
yeah.
And so this was just a mini band, but the sound that was coming out of that band was like nothing I'd ever heard, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, and it just, if I even needed another kick in the right direction to like fuel my piping obsession, like that was it, and it did, right?
Yeah. No, I don't doubt it did. I mean,
and then like, so I started competing this year, and so at this workshop, I also got to take a number of individual lessons, like from Jack Lee, like one-on-one, going over my tunes and stuff. And this was just so cool. I mean, I'm not going to beat the horse again, but like, yeah. So fast forward into this summer. And so here up comes the Salt Lake Scottish Festival, which
and you're fired up, right?
Yeah. So which at the time was in Murray, and by this time, like I am just ripping tunes on pipes, and like I'm just practicing and practicing and practicing. Like, okay, so at this point, I would have been a senior in high school by this point, and so by the time the Scottish Festival came around, I would have just graduated. So,
and so also you've got no time for like girls, drugs, or nefarious activities. You are a bagpiping man at this point.
Honestly, girl, I wasn't like a ladies' man in high school, you know? So like I didn't really have many distractions. And so I knew I was going to do this solo competition, and that was going to be my first competition. And so I just worked my butt off, and came the day or whatever. And
you would have been soloing grade 4 or?
Grade 4. Yeah. Just that was the default.
Right.
I don't think they had chanter at the time, but I was already well up on pipes by then. So I just did grade 4, which would have been a slow air and a 2/4 march. And so by this time, another famous piping album that many of your listeners would have heard of, the Carnegie Hall CD from SFU.
Yeah, of course.
And so like Stuart Little was already a well-known piping figure by that time, 98. But this is really what made him like worldwide known in the piping world. I think he had a solo on there which was the Blue Cloud and Nixon's Apron, and probably one of the most iconic bagpiping solos on any album.
That's why those two songs were the first ones I independently ever chose to learn. Like it was gotta learn those two songs.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. And to hear like the crowd erupting, like, you know, after that, it was just like, at Carnegie Hall, I mean, he just took the whole house down. Yeah. You know? And anyway, so this is kind of a funny story. So he would have been joined SFU in 98. This would have been 99. So the judges were Stuart Little and Robert McNeil. But I didn't know what Stuart Little looked like. I had never seen him, right? No YouTube.
You were probably imagining a cute little white mouse.
Yeah, I had no idea. And so like I go up for my first competition, which was the slow air, and I remember I played Mist Covered Mountains. And this is another thing that's on a VHS somewhere that my mom or dad recorded.
Yeah, got to get that one in a museum as well.
And anyway, the funny thing is I actually played really well. I mean, I ended up winning the grade 4 on my first
Was this,
try.
Were you the only one playing Mist Covered Mountains at the time at that competition? By chance?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
There's nothing wrong with the tune. I love the tune, and I have had a lot of my students. That's the one that I've said like, hey, this is a cool tune. It's a good one to start with for your soloing. But I do sometimes wonder like, how many times has every judge heard this tune?
So a lot, and it's okay because it's a good tune. But
totally
like,
okay.
Here's the thing: is like I was passionate about it because that was one of the really cool slow airs that was featured in one of the medleys on that 78th Fraser Live in Ireland CD.
Do you think that's part of why it's so popular? Is it because it
was
I
don't know. I mean, obviously that's an iconic album.
Yeah.
And so like hearing it there as part of one of their medleys.
Yeah.
And I believe it was like leading into like the Little Cascade played and like, and they throw in a slide. And that just did not that doesn't even happen today. Now Inverary is starting to throw like a couple slides in their medleys, but like
only bands with enough clout can sneak it in,
right? but 78th was doing that in the 80s.
Yeah,
I mean,
and infuriating many of the stalwart traditionalists.
Well, and this is the same with SFU. I know, like 78th always gets all the credit for being the first overseas band to ever win the world championships. And that is true. Like no one can ever take that away from them. But SFU, under the leadership of Jack and Terry Lee, started in 81, and they started immediately going over to the Worlds. And the mid 80s are full of performances that probably should have won the Worlds from SFU.
But they were ahead of their time.
So this was when Strathclyde Police was making their run, their famous run of 6 world championships in a row, and and SFU. I don't even like most piping historians like that were around at the time, which I obviously wasn't around at that time for like, but just from everything that I've heard, they should have won at least a couple times.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't until, and the 78th were also coming out at this time, and it wasn't until they were just literally like so much better than everyone else that they had to give it to them. Like they had no choice. Like it wasn't like before, like they probably should have given it to them. But now when the 78th came
it would have been
like,
embarrassing if they didn't.
87, like it would have been, yeah, like all the credibility would have been taken away.
Yeah.
And so they gave it to them, and then SFU became the next band, and that didn't happen until 95. So from 87 to 95, and then they won it back to back, 95, 96.
I am fact checking you on Wikipedia right now, and you're hitting it all 100%
oh, yeah.
so
well,
far.
I know this. That's why it's coming out. Like I know this.
You wrote this Wikipedia article.
So, and it could also be argued that later in the 90s that Victoria Police could have or should have won it several times, but they didn't win it until 98.
Yep.
And then SFU came back again and won it in 99. And that brings us to where we are now. So like meeting with SFU, this was early in 99. So would it be embarrassing if I were to just ask you like who won in 2003? Would you remember? No, that wouldn't be embarrassing. So SFU won in 2001. 2002 would have been I believe Field Marshal.
Yep.
And 2003, I believe, would have been Shots.
Yep. That's
2004 would have been Field Marshal.
Yeah.
2005 would have been Shots.
Yeah.
2006 and 7 Field Marshal. 2008 and 9 SFU.
Yep.
That 2009 being the last time SFU has won.
Right.
So staying at 6 for quite a while now. And 2010 would have been St. Lawrence O'Toole, and starting in 2011, it would have been Field Marshal's run of 4 in a row.
Right.
And I was privileged to hear that first of the 4 in a row.
Is that when Wasatch was over? Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So
I just wanted to see how far you could go. That was fun.
No, I like I said, I'm a nerd.
Bob Worrell was right.
Yeah. And I guess I'm proud of it, I guess. I mean, there's no real benefit of being ashamed of it at this point, right? So
yeah, you have every right to be proud of it. You own that, man.
Okay. So I did my first competition, and then no band. By that point, like the little group, I don't know if it was still associated with BYU at the time, but like it probably was. But I do know that they didn't have like a competitive. Piper wise, we could have done it, but we didn't have the drum corps.
That's always the challenge.
Yeah,
you need to treat our drummers better so they'll stick around.
So I just did the solos, and so let's go back to my association with Ian Crane, who was with Salt Lake Scots, and he was on a mission. He wanted to get upgraded to grade 1, and here I am just starting out in grade 4, and so he quickly became a really good friend. And so that year we went, just the two of us, and maybe like once or twice someone else came with us. Like we just started going on road trips. Like by this time I'm graduated. Okay, I should be starting probably college, but that was not even on my radar.
You got this bagpiping thing to do.
Okay, yeah, like I know this is gonna sound so irresponsible, but like I was just so into this, and I kind of knew in my mind that I was gonna go to college. That was never in question. But like, so I come from, the LDS background, so like that's going to be part of it. Like I did end up going on a mission in the next year.
Yeah, there's plenty of mission talk on this podcast. So don't worry about that. Yeah.
And I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that is just part of the journey, So for 2 years that was a thing. So anyway, so I knew in my mind I wasn't really going to I didn't want to go to like one semester and then take 2 years off. So I was, in my mind, I was just going to start after. So like I just had nothing else going except for like a little bit of work to make some money and then just go on all these epic trips.
To make some money specifically to spend on bagpiping trips.
And so we went all over. I think my next one would have been like a week or two after the Salt Lake ones. We drove down to San Diego. And so this would have been my first experience of like going outside of Utah playing. Yeah. And then, we went to Estes Park, and that's like I could spend an hour just talking about each one of these because we had just had the funniest things happen. Like our van borrowed my mom's minivan. The transmission went out coming over the mountain down into Estes Park. We basically coasted into the parking lot of the grass field, and then the car didn't move after that.
Oh man.
And we were stuck there for like all week, like eating like 7-layer burritos from Taco Bell.
Yeah.
But like that's just part of the fun. I mean, like at that time, like I didn't have any responsibility. So like, I remember like me and him flirting with like the hotel clerk, and like I'm not a ladies man, but we were trying to get like a good deal on like a cheap hotel room so we had somewhere to sleep, until we figured out a way to get out of there.
And did you lead with, hey, my buddy here's a grade 2 competitive piper, but he's on his way to grade 1?
Yeah, if you want him to play Blair Drummond for you, he will.
That'll get you a free hotel room anywhere.
He's got a wicked burl.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like our mindset. And so that's kind of how I became like the nerd that I am. And because like he was such a nerd too. And like, and we were such good friends like for that time. And we went to like down to Tucson. Like we just went all over. And I started doing all these solo contests, and can't say I won them all, but I did win a few. And I got a good start into my solo competitive career there. And so fast forward a little bit, to the next winter, 2000. So I don't know how they pulled it off, but apparently like the 99, that was kind of like their trial run, because SFU was doing this long string of like Highland arts festivals where it was like a major event. Like they picked a destination, they went there, they would do a concert. They would not only do workshops, but they would bring in fiddlers, Irish dancers, like the best in the world. Like, are you familiar with like Natalie McMaster?
Oh, yeah.
The Cape Breton fiddler. Like, I was aware of her at the time as well. Like, had some of her CDs. Like, they brought her in. This was in 2000.
Wow. That was here in Utah?
Yeah, they brought in Battlefield Band. Like
you're telling me about all these things. I'm like, why didn't I know about these things? I should have been there.
I don't know. But this was like the most formative thing in my whole piping life. Like they came in, like, remember I told you about Battlefield Band?
Yeah.
They brought in Battlefield Band from Scotland. Like they played a concert at the Provo Tabernacle, which has since burned down and become the Provo Temple.
Right.
And at this time, it was the Tabernacle, and they had a concert in there, a Battlefield Band. And
I did go to some shows there. That was a cool venue.
Yeah. And I was just totally geeking out all over again. Not only SFU, not the mini band, but the full band.
Man, and not only did they come to Utah, but they came right down to Provo, to your backyard. You didn't even have to drive to Salt Lake to see them.
No. And they had just won the Worlds in August. Oh, I will say, like, okay, fast forward back to 99. One of the trips we went on was to Pleasanton. And I actually kind of crashed in the Salt Lake Scots room, because Ian was playing with Salt Lake Scots, and I just went as a tag along, and I just tried to stay out of the way,
Yeah.
And I went to do solos, but SFU came down to Pleasanton that year, and this is another how many transformative experiences can I have? Okay, so this is the first time hearing a grade 1 band compete in a competition. And actually the first time hearing a full grade 1 band, like SFU at their full strength, because they had just won the Worlds literally like I think Pleasanton's like 2 weeks after the Worlds, maybe 3. But anyway, here they are at Pleasanton.
All the pipers, full drum corps, everything.
Full drum corps, Reed Maxwell, and I remember like, if you've never been to Pleasanton, the competition is not out in the middle of a big field like they do it here in Utah. It's like there's stands on 3 sides, and then what happens is they march in, and then the steward will quickly rope it off, and then people will just fill in. And so you are right up right next to the band, especially the big bands.
Yeah.
And
they spread that circle out. You can feel the air from the drone.
I don't know how many times I've played at Pleasanton with like Wasatch, and I mean, but it's always one of the best competitive experiences because like the crowd is literally right there.
Yeah.
Like, and you are just in the mix, and you're not like out in the middle of a field somewhere. So anyway, so somehow me and Ian, we snuck up right to the ropes or whatever with SFU coming in, and I remember marching into their SFU, I remember this specifically, like striking into their MSR, hearing that E, and then hearing SFU march right by me where I could have like reached out and touched Jack Lee on the pipe sergeant side. Like my arms are long enough, I probably could have reached out and touched him, but like that's how close the sound was. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
The sound of SFU marching toward me, playing Lord Alexander Kennedy, like the power of that sound.
That's that wall of sound right there.
Again, was like nothing I had ever heard. And like, even though I had heard the miniband and I had heard all the CDs, hearing this sound, like, oh my gosh, like it was like nothing else. I mean, it was just insane, like totally mind blowing. Again, I know I keep throwing that out, so it's not going to mean anything, but like I kept having this experience. It's just like, okay, if I wasn't already passionate about it, I'm even more.
Right.
Okay.
It might reignite.
I'm glad I'm doing this because like even talking to you about this, it's like making me want to go practice right now.
Right. It's firing you up, right? Yeah.
And like, I'm still doing a lot of playing, but like, it's making me want to like get more into it than I already am right now. Cause like just reliving these experiences, which I haven't really talked about for years. So,
well, it makes a lot of sense. This has been the worry that has certainly come across my mind. And I think a lot of people with the COVID-19 thing, canceling the worlds and so many competitions, it's that one great experience is certainly valuable, but you kind of need to keep having great experiences to keep that fire lit. And so if we have a lot of pipers and drummers who maybe are just getting started out and then COVID cancels all the competitions, there's no more getting together, even for band practices and stuff, that fire can go out.
Well, I think anyone who says that that's not going to happen a little bit is probably naive. Like we will lose a few, but I think also at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if we gained back a few that have taken a break and like that have been now after COVID's done, and just I think there's going to be so much excitement just to go through the mundane things of like a
that's it. You make a good point.
That's like you know what I mean, like a parade or just a Highland Games. Like there's been several times throughout my piping career that I've been so burnt out, like where I just did not even want to be at the games. Like I wanted to compete, like I wanted to be, but like I just had no interest of being there.
Oh, I know what you mean. Like sometimes you're like, could I just show up in my shorts, man? I don't want to put on my socks one more time.
When it's like, I mean, in Utah, like it's like basically 100 degrees. You know, you're in your kilt, you're sitting there all day, you're dehydrated, you're sunburnt. You know, it's like it's not necessarily a pleasant experience.
Right. It's like could we just rent like a hotel conference room and just play in our jeans?
But I have a feeling that like after this COVID, when we finally start getting back in person, like there is going to be a time where people are more excited to do the basic things that we took for granted, right?
It is a good point. I think that that's very true. Like we have pretty low numbers right now in our band. And we're probably not going to hit competition numbers for the pacing games, which they are planning to push through this summer. And our pipe major asked us, he was like, hey, who wants to play? And pretty much everyone was like, even if we're just doing it for a crit, let's play. You know, like we're just desperate to go play.
Yeah, totally. And I kind of lucked out a little bit, like with Wasatch. We kind of kept going through the storm, and we took a little break right at the beginning, but then like as soon as we could meet outside, we started. So we had rehearsals all through COVID, and we tried to be responsible. Like we didn't do a lot of like hands-on with reeds manipulating and blowing each other's pipes. Like obviously, like and like at the level that our band's at, you know, the pipe major Ross, he's just like, you know, you need to flatten your F just a tinge, you know, and like we just do it ourselves, right? Yeah. So like we tried to be responsible. We had hand sanitizer for tuning drones and stuff, you know, but it's just like we kept it going, and then we ended up doing like a pretty well received concert that was live stream.
Oh, I watched that. That was great, man.
Yeah. So that was
and I don't doubt that it would have been well received anyway. It probably would have been enjoyed by everybody anyway. But I wonder like to what degree where it was like this dearth of what you could like we were all locked down worldwide, you know. And so then here comes this shining light from Wasatch and District. I don't that might have contributed a little bit too.
In any other year, it would have flown right under the radar.
Yeah.
But as it was with nothing going on, I mean, we got shout outs. The Big Rab was like raving about. I mean, like, and this was nothing special. Like in the like when you live in a world of like Field Marshal and Inverary,
right.
SFU,
but it was content in a content-starved world,
and even like the chanter rant said it was like maybe like the win of the year or something. I mean, you know, they do the win of the week, but they were like, oh, let's just give it the win of the year, you know, because last year sucked.
Yep,
and there was nothing, and so that was kind of cool. I mean, so we kept it going.
It was good on its own anyway.
Yeah,
so not to say it wasn't a great concert. It was really great.
Yeah, by that time, you know, I think that was October. Like, so basically we were, after that concert, that was the last time we met until, I don't know, about a month ago. So
well, and this episode is gonna go out in at least a few weeks, maybe a couple months. So it might be that once people are listening to this, that we're in the middle of everybody celebrating and being back together with their bands and playing and stuff.
Hope so.
And you'll be proven a prophet. So. Here's hoping.
And actually, I guess there's no real reason to keep it a secret, but like Wasatch is actually planning like a cross country trip to a games that we know is happening on the East Coast.
Like if nothing else happens, we're going to make it to that one at least.
And and this is like a little bit later. It's going to be in October, and it's one of the big games on the East Coast. And because we just want to do something, like we need to keep our players engaged. Right?
Yeah, you got to keep that fire burning.
And I know every band has taken that approach differently, and some people are just using it as a break. But you know, I don't know if there is a right way because there's no precedent, right?
Sure.
So, but I do kind of feel that like once we get through this, that we will lose some, because like once people learn that there's other things that you can do, like every Thursday night or whatever. Besides,
that's true.
Like your life can fill up. So like I think we will lose some, but I'm hopeful that we'll gain back some that maybe once you can go out and start doing things again, like, oh, I'm all cooped up. Like I want to go out and pipe again, you know?
Well, and there definitely have been, maybe it's because of being stuck at home and looking for something to do. I know that like our band's our little class that we do, we've been trying to put it online. And it got hot with COVID, you know, like more and more people who had never played before were like, I want to learn, you know, so we might have an influx of new pipers and drummers as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. And, you know, all you can do is just be optimistic, right? I mean, like, just hope for the best. And I think there'll definitely be, like, the diehards that will come back and be more passionate than ever. And if you lose some, that in the piping world, it's always losing players, like, right?
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's an ebb and flow. And
the boundaries are porous.
Maybe, like, the new incoming players will not be quite as strong as it would have been in a healthy year. Like, we'll just have to deal with it and move on and try to maybe some of this technological stuff that's come out of it will actually help people be more involved. Like for example, like I haven't been involved with solos for years, but I have started going back and doing some of these online things. And that's been like a great experience to get like the feedback, and not only that, but like to have something to motivate me to practice.
You got something you're working toward. Yeah. Put a date on the calendar and actually work up to it.
Yeah. I don't know if this is kosher. Is there any way to like pause this for a second or something?
Oh yeah, totally. Here, what I can do is just give me 1 second.
Hello friends, just a quick note to make you aware, this podcast is something that I love doing and I will keep doing it no matter what. But if you want to send me money, I won't say a nay. The easiest way to do that is through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. We do regular drawings for bagpipey albums, books, sheet music, and more, including Droning On swag. All patrons are in the figurative hat from whence the names of winners are drawn, and there are other benefits to members as well. They're all listed there at patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. And speaking of swag, another way to support the show is to buy cool stuff from my little online shop, bagpipeswag.com. There you can find Droning On stuff as well as other pipey and drummy things that my friends and I make. And if you feel so inclined, I genuinely invite you to follow the show on Facebook. It's super fun to have a way to interact over there, to discuss past episodes, and I also like to bounce ideas off of you, my friends, ask you for input on upcoming interviews, that kind of stuff. I'd like to invite you to join in on virtual book clubs and probably lots of other cool stuff that I just haven't even thought of yet as of this recording. It's easy to find. Just get on Facebook and search Droning On Podcast. And if Instagram is more your jam, we're also on there at droning.on.podcast. You can also email the show at thedroningonpodcast@gmail.com. And links to these sites, social media accounts, and more are in the show notes. Leaving the show a positive rating and review helps others to find it, so feel free to do that. And thank you again for listening, you cool human you.
So, I think, where were we? We're talking, going to Pleasanton.
Right, at Pleasanton.
Hearing SFU. We keep getting sidetracked, but that's just how I am with piping. Like, I just love talking about piping, if you can tell. And
and getting sidetracked is kind of the modus operandi of this show. So don't worry about that.
Makes your job a little easier, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to come up with like random questions.
Exactly.
So,
I can just sit back and go, man.
Oh no, I mean, and that's fine too. But I definitely don't have a problem talking about piping and finding things to talk about. So
yeah.
And that's kind of why I like it. It's my passion. So
so you traveled around getting inspired. You went on a mission for the Mormon Church. Did you go anywhere that had to do with piping by chance? It's nice when a piper gets called to go to Scotland or Canada.
No, although believe me, as a religious person, I probably was asking God, will you send me to Scotland?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No,
I think probably most Mormon pipers and drummers are asking God to send them to Scotland, Ireland, Canada, etc.
Yeah. And no, I didn't.
Australia.
So I think we were kind of talking about this big, huge Celtic Arts festival.
Oh, yeah.
SFU did. And I won't spend too much more time on that other than it was just amazing. Like, they did a concert at the Marriott Center, and I have that on camcorder too. And I mean, Natalie McMaster was there. I mean, like, it was just a full blown, this would have been most of their content that they were getting ready to do at their Sydney Opera House album, which was the next year, 2001.
So that's awesome. So you basically got the Sydney Opera House rehearsal.
We got it in advance.
That's amazing.
It was most of the same stuff, but also some unique stuff, maybe some carryover stuff from a little earlier. And, obviously some totally unique stuff that wasn't anywhere else. But I would say, like, if I had to say what was this concert, it was probably very similar to the Sydney Opera House. And that's another really, really cool CD. And so by this time, by 2001, I would have been in the middle of my mission. And so for those that aren't LDS that are listening to this, like, when you're on a mission, like, you pretty much live under a set of rules and you agree to it before you even go. And so, like, there's, like, you don't watch TV, you pretty much just focus on what you're there to do. And so, like, you even have, like, you don't listen to popular music and stuff,
Right. Yeah.
But I remember I was kind of bad, and I remember Ian White, he smuggled me that Sydney Opera House CD that had just come out. And I remember listening to that, and it was a new SFU CD that came out when I was on my mission. Of course, I had to listen to it, and I had my little Discman or whatever. And
did you sneak it at night when your mission companion was asleep?
Or maybe he thought I was listening to the Tabernacle Choir. I don't know. And I was just really jamming out to it. And then eventually I did have my mom, like, send me out some bagpiping CDs, because, like, it was kind of like a loophole in the rule. Like, you could listen to some instrumental music.
Yeah, hey, that's instrumental.
Yeah, and they weren't super strict about it. Like, every mission, so the mission president is the one who leads over the mission, and they kind of set their own rules.
Yeah, sure.
And ours was a little more lax on that. And so I basically had my mom ship me out, like, all my favorite CDs, and I probably shouldn't have, because it was very distracting. But so I was kind of lucky, because my mission leader, my mission president, he let me bring my bagpipes, that's not a normal thing for missionaries to be able to bring, like, their instruments and stuff. So,
right, yeah.
And so I was actually able to bring it, and I had my full pipes, I had my practice chanter, and I had a Deeger electronic bagpipe as well, which helped me, like, so once a week you kind of have a day when you're on your mission where you kind of take care of your personal items, like, you don't
do laundry and stuff.
Yeah, it's called like a preparation day. So like you kind of, do laundry, write letters. This is kind of dates me, but like they had email when I went on my mission, but we still wrote letters.
Oh,
so
really?
I'd say like, okay, we were writing letters. We still did that. We didn't have access to computers. So
see, when I was a missionary, we were allowed to use email for up to 1 hour.
Okay.
And only email our parents, nobody else. But we could write letters to anyone we wanted. So I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it was to avoid the distraction of instant messaging or whatever else would have been hot at the time. Yeah. I guess Facebook was starting to get hot then, but yeah, it's funny. Yeah. It's funny how so like now I've got a little brother like who's on how
much things changed in a short time.
Yeah, because I've got a little brother who's on a mission right now.
You're only like 7 or 8 years different than me.
Right.
But, like, you are basically in a different world in that time of your life.
Yeah, right? And then my little brother who's on a mission right now is doing a video call with us like every night.
That's just insane to even think about.
It's crazy, right?
So for those, I mean, I think I'd say like a lot of your listeners probably are familiar with the experience of a Latter-day Saint mission, but for those that aren't, like when I went, and probably when you went too, like you basically talk to your parents twice a year, once on Mother's Day, once on Christmas.
Yep, and there was a time limit for that too. If I remember right, my mission's time limit was 2 hours. Yeah. You got 2 hours on Christmas and 2 hours on Mother's Day, and other than that, you never talk to anybody at home other than that 1 hour to email once a week.
But the funny thing is it actually did. I was homesick, but like it did help you focus on what you were doing. And you felt like you were kind of, I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but you're focused.
But it is crazy. Like my little brother now, like when they're driving home in the evening, that's another thing. They're in a car. I was walking the whole time, right? But when they're driving home in the evening, he'll just put out a link, like join me on the video call, and whoever wants to just hops on, just like, hey, how was your day? Oh, cool, man. Here's my baby. Oh, cool.
I can't even fathom. It's crazy,
right?
I can't even fathom what that was like. And I had many a homesick nights, but it was, for me, I guess in the culture that we live in, it's not something that, everyone does and everyone has their own path. But like for those that do it can kind of act as kind of like almost like a rite of passage, kind of like a growing up experience, right? You're on your own for the first time, and you're living life, and you're away from all your comforts, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like you could strip all religious aspect from it, and for any young person around, between 18 and 21 to go and live in a different place for 2 years would definitely be a formative experiance.
And many do that with college, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So a similar type of thing, although much different focus, like, and you're not doing like the social life of a college student, obviously, but like you're living on your own, you're cooking your own meals, you're buying your own food, you're doing your own laundry, you're living,
Some would say you're burning your own meals and not doing your own laundry, but though you should.
Well, in my case, you are microwaving your own microwave burritos.
Yep.
And you are cooking your own ramen.
Yep, lots of Pop-Tarts. Yep.
So, but anyway, to kind of get back to it. So I was a little distracted because I was every bit as passionate about piping like the whole time I was there. And I thought about it a lot, and I probably should say that I didn't, but I did. And kind of getting like these CDs and having my pipes. And I will say that I did end up doing quite a bit of practicing like on my P day, like when we had the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't usually on the pipes. It was usually on the electronic chanter that I could put the earphones in and my companion wouldn't hear. That's the person that you live with, like,
right. Yeah.
And so, but so essentially like I kept the passion burning, I came home, and by that time, this group that was kind of the BYU pipe band kind of went through a few formations. Like I think they kind of did a phase where they were the Y Mount pipe band, and I don't know.
I hadn't even heard that name.
Yeah, that was kind of when I was gone, and then that was very short-lived. And then when I came back, they were the full-blown Mount Timpanogos pipe band, and they just had new kilts and new uniforms, and they had drummers, and this all happened when I was on my mission. So I came back in May, and the Scottish Festival in Salt Lake is usually like the first week of June or the second week of June, and so I literally hopped right into the circle. I got a kilt, I got my uniform, and I got my chanter, and I hopped right in, and I learned the music, and I literally competed. My first band competition ever was 2002, just a couple weeks after I got back. And at this time, I also decided to hop back into solos, and I I decided that I was ready to move up to grade 3 at that time. And whether or not I was ready, I probably should have waited a little bit, because like the first competition back, my fingers weren't quite like the passion was there, but
yeah,
I think the raw ability was there, but like it was a little unclean.
Right. There's some of those little magic adjustments that just...
I think that would have been the first time I competed against like Ross and Justin, who have been very prominent figures, like with the Wasatch and are some of the more prominent very high end pipers in the whole state. So at that time they were, I don't know, 4 or 5 years younger than me, like maybe 4 years. I can't remember exactly, but they were kind of coming up together, and so I didn't really know them.
So you show up to compete, and you're like, who are these young whippersnappers?
Yeah, I show up
and then you hear them play, it's like, nabbit.
Yeah, they're very disciplined, and here I am, like 2 weeks back from like, being on a mission and competing. Anyway, but I just dove headfirst back into it. So like I started up college that fall, but I basically still didn't really have much of a life other than piping, and so I just became obsessed with it again. I started doing solo competitions again. This band, the Mount Timpanogos Pipe Band, that was the one and only like competition that I did with them in that iteration of the band, with Ian White as the pipe major, because they didn't travel, but I went full blown into traveling to solos that fall, right, and did that, or that summer, that fall. So I got right back into it, and by that time my friend Ian Crane, he had moved out to Ohio. He moved there shortly at, like, about the time I went on my mission, and he played for a grade 2 band out there. But he also became a member of the grade 1 City of Washington Pipe Band, and he would drive several hours out there as much as he could, and so he went to the Worlds with the grade 1, and so I was kind of like living vicarious. He would write me letters. Yeah, I just went to my grade 1 band practice today. That's another thing that like kind of kept me. Oh man, that's so cool.
Does that band play? Are they part of one of the Canadian associations? I have this vague notion.
The City of Washington?
Yeah, I have this vague notion that some of the Washington and Oregon area, the bands play with a Canadian association instead of WUSPBA.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they probably go to some of the games on that circuit, but I think like you're right though, like the Northeast bands, I think Oregon does have their own thing, but I think the bands are part of the BC Pipers Association, and they kind of take part in that circuit for the most part.
Yeah.
They do that more than come down to California.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, I just get this idea that it's like WUSPBA is like the western states in California, but somehow those two in the corner, I never see any bands from there, and I've got this feeling that it's because they're in Canada, but I don't really know the.
Well, I mean, I do have a bit of experience going there. I mean, Wasatch has gone up to Enumclaw a number of times, and that's like that's by Seattle. That's the Pacific Northwest Highland Games, and that's always like one of my favorites to go to, because the great, like, Triumph Street kind of disbanded, but like, when Triumph Street was the last decade or so going full strength there, they would come down. SFU was always there.
Yeah.
They have the open solos, like if you want to hear like Jack Lee and Alan Bevan and like all the SFU guys. I don't need to name all their names.
Right.
I'm just like,
but it's a beautiful setting too. Yeah. It's also a great place for
it's like up in the pine trees.
Right.
And, yeah. So like, and the band's been to Portland as well. Like, we've talked about maybe doing like a trip up into Canada to do like a BC Games, but that hasn't happened yet. And so the band did go to Maxville. Like, that was right before I joined the band. And we'll kind of get to that part of the story. But like, so we've always talked about like doing like a big trip, something out of the ordinary, because we kind of do the California circuit and kind of the Western circuit. So like, we always go to like Costa Mesa, which is like Orange County. We go to Pleasanton, that's like kind of by the Bay Area, and we do
Queen Mary,
Sacramento. We've done Queen Mary, all the West Coast big games, and we've done other ones too, like Colorado, and we don't do that as much. We've gone down to Arizona, but like most of because like once your band gets up to a certain level, you have to basically go to where those other bands in that grade play, right?
Right. So you got a grade 2 band. You got to find another one to play against.
When Wasatch first got into grade 2, we didn't really have the problem when we were in grade 3. I mean, in Utah we did, because like we had to still travel anywhere to play against a grade 3 band, right? But like and I don't want to leave out the Salt Lake Scots because for a while they were in grade 3 as well. And so, but like I think most of the time.
But even then, neither of you wants to only compete with one other band.
Right. So basically the whole time I've been with that band, like we basically just travel, you know, and that's how we compete. And they have a system down and we just do it, you know, and that's fun. That's part of the fun experience for me. But you just kind of have to go where the bands are. So, and anyway, don't want to get too side. I don't know. This is like the long story. This is no one's gonna listen to this.
Some people might. People will take it in
Swan,
right. Yeah.
He's kind of like piping nerd, like almost Johnny level.
He's my personal reference piping nerd. Like I think I was telling you that like I don't remember what kind of drone reeds I have, but he knows, so I just text him whenever I need to know. Like, hey, what's
funny? Like,
what's my stuff again?
You tell me that on text, and you're like, they're like this color and this. I'm like, oh, it's this reed. You know, I don't even have to see it. You know? So anyway, so I start doing a ton of solo stuff. Some of the stuff I'm driving by myself. I made some other friends. Went to several games with another piper that was out of the Salt Lake Scots, Chantel Beck. She was another really, really good piper at about grade 2 level. And so I was friends with her, and I went with her family on a couple trips. Anyway, I was just basically I would try to tag along whenever I could to anyone who was going competing, or I would sometimes just drive myself down. And I remember sleeping under a tree, sleeping in the back of my car, like just doing anything I can to save money. You ever
pitch your kilt like a tent?
No, but we did pitch a tent several times when going down to Costa Mesa before I was part of the band that was regularly going there every year. I went soloed there several times. I think 2003 would have been the first time I went to Costa Mesa, which has become one of my favorite games. I mean, it's just minutes from the beach, but basically it's just the Southern California vibe, but with piping, and you know, all the like LA Scots are there, and you know, all the Southern California bands go there, and most of the Northern California bands that are serious will come down to Costa Mesa because it's the second biggest games in California other than Pleasanton, which is northern. So,
right.
So, but the first couple times I went down there, we would camp. I camped Costa Mesa. Then the following year, 2004, I would have went again with Justin Highland, and we camped and went with another friend, Heidi. And you know, but these are fun experiences. I mean, so many stories come out of these experiences.
Oh, it's a big part of why people do pipe band. It's
is
for running around and hanging out with each other.
I mean, I've been on so many of these trips, and like I honestly couldn't tell you like what MSR we played or what we placed on certain days or whatever, but I can tell you like the time we went to the beach and this funny thing happened, or like what meals we ate. You know, like those are the stories that kind of stand out, right? And the piping is kind of like the vehicle that takes you there.
Right. Yeah. It gives you an excuse to.
Don't get me wrong. Like in the moment, stuff. Like what we played for the MSR and who we placed against and what our placings and what the judges said. Don't get me wrong. In the moment, that is very serious to us, and like we take it very seriously, and we are very competitive. But like years later, like that fades, right? And then you remember the stories, you remember the people, you remember your friends, and that's what kind of keeps me coming back. I think like if it was just the music, it might get a little old doing like the same thing every year, but you always have a different story, right?
Yeah.
Like every time you go on the trip, you have a different story. So yeah, let me fast forward a little bit. This is the long story. I'm so sorry. I'm not pacing myself, but like going to around 2003, this would have been one of the trips that I think like I was going to go with a friend, and they kind of had to cancel the Las Vegas games. It was just one that came up in April, and I was going to solo, so I went down there, and Andrew Morrill, which was a longtime pipe major of the Utah Pipe Band, and the current pipe major of Wasatch's father. You know, Ross, he's the current pipe major of the Wasatch grade 2. So his father, Andrew, been playing forever, you know, like really, you know, prominent Utah piping figure, pipe major of Utah Pipe Band. And anyway, he was my judge for one of my events, and I knew who he was. He knew who I was. He had seen me, but like we didn't really have a relationship. But he came up to me, and he basically just talked me into coming and playing for Utah Pipe Band at the time, which was one of the grade 3 bands at that time that were in Utah, the other being the Salt Lake Scots. So it's kind of funny that I didn't join the Scots because I knew I was friends with a lot of players there. But for some reason, I was drawn to come play with Utah, and he basically just recruited me right on the spot. And a couple weeks later, I was in their vans going to Sacramento. I competed solo that trip, but I wasn't ready to compete with the band yet, but I basically just hopped in full bore into Utah pipe band grade 3, learned all the music really fast and started competing with them. And that's kind of how I made a lot of the associations, which I still carry on to this day with a lot of the players that are now in Wasatch. And so a lot of the players that are in Wasatch, that comprise Wasatch now, did kind of come from the Utah pipe band.
Right.
So I don't know. That's a whole nother story, but so at this time I was still playing with the Mount Timpanogos pipe band, but I was able to play with Utah pipe band as well under one of the technicalities, because they're different grade bands. You know, I can be a registered member for both. But as it turns out, like Ian, so we coming into the summer of 2003, getting all ready to do another competitive run with Timpanogos, but Ian got a job in Colorado, and he's moving out of state, and at that time, like I was basically the one that was handed the keys to the band.
Gotcha.
So I mean, like, it was kind of like placed on my lap. I mean, I was at a point where, like, I was still early on in my piping career, but I was so passionate about it, and I had come so far in such a short period of time. I'm not saying I was ready, but like there was really no one else that really had the time and a drive to kind of keep it going. So I kind of took the reins. Ian left, but like I will say that we didn't really continue on too much with too much competitions after that. Like, we tried, but it was always hard with the drummers, you know.
Yeah.
It was always hard. That was like the thing that
the universal challenge.
Yeah. And so we did our best. But we still met weekly, and we did a ton of gigs, and we practiced, and we worked hard, and and we had our things that we did. We were definitely a band, and so I was a pipe major of the band for a number of years, actually for like 7 years. But it was always like I enjoyed the relationships in that band. Like, Joe was one of my best friends, and a lot of other people in the band. Like, that was just like more good time piping, right? Like, have fun and have some good fun experiences.
Yeah.
But like, I was so serious about the competition side, and I just thrived off of that. I basically wanted to be like what had inspired me. Like, I wanted to be grade 1. I wanted to sound like that. So like, so I thought playing in the Utah pipe band, at least locally, was my best option. I thought, for like, because they traveled outside the state a lot, and so that year in 2003, we went up to Enumclaw. That was my first time going up to BC area, like circuit, and here in SFU, like that's another thing. I took my camcorder up there. I remember, like, I camcorded all Jack Lee, Stuart Little, Alan Bevan, Andrew Bonar, like all these great players, like, just another, I was always just trying to soak it in. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going around competing with Utah and still kind of learning how to be a pipe major, at least on a very small level, with Mount Timpanogos, and trying to keep that going, and teaching and getting students and helping the pipers there and trying to keep things together. And it was kind of, definitely I wasn't aspiring to do that, and it was definitely kind of a learning experience. It was kind of thrown in my lap, so.
Yeah.
But had many, many good experiences with that band over the years, and many fun times and fun memories, even though we didn't really do too much. We did compete at Salt Lake, like maybe once or twice more, and maybe even played for sheets, but like it was never like the serious motivating drive, even though, believe me, like there was a bit of a frustration at one point, because like I wanted to take this band and have it, because there was some good talent in the band.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like I wanted to take them out to the games and see what we could do, grade 4. This was before like WUSPBA had grade 5, but I think even then I think we would have been grade 4, because like our pipe corps we had some good players.
But it was always just kind of like pulling teeth, like, and you know exactly what I mean, I'm sure, like, you know, trying to be a pipe major. It's like not everyone is on board with the same level of commitment that you want it to be, right?
Yeah, that's the challenge. And part of it is just like seasons of life. Like, you know, you have stuff lined up and then somebody gets pregnant or gets a job out of state or something. It's like, oh, well, now we don't have competition numbers. So,
and that's why I kind of satisfied my competitive thing through this Utah pipe band. And I was still heavily involved in the solos. And I thought, okay, this is good. I get the band experience, get to go play with the band, but then I also basically get to go on free trips to go do solos as well.
Yeah.
You know, go down to all of California or wherever the band's going and do solos. So fast forward, like maybe 2004, people don't care about this. Like no one's going to care about this, but maybe they can pick out a nugget of something that is interesting.
Yeah. Don't sweat it.
I don't know. And so 2004, I, you know, still playing with Utah. And this year, Utah kind of, I'm not going to go into the details, but basically a large portion of their competitive members, particularly in the grade 3 band, which I believe they had 2 bands at the time, but like, so they had a falling out basically, and they left Utah Pipe Band, and so that kind of stunk for a while, but then they kind of already had in their mind, like Andrew particularly, he kind of already had in his mind the formation of what would become Wasatch District.
Yeah.
Like kind of like his idea of what he wanted for a band and kind of the structure, you know. And so I kind of just put all my focus into this Mount Timpanogos, and I still was traveling and doing solos, like traveling with some of my, like Justin particularly, and we traveled and went to some of these solo contests, you know, and kept that. So I was still just as passionate, but the band thing kind of subsided for a while. So I was just kind of just doing parades and gigs with Timpanogos. And
so at that point you weren't playing with Utah Pipe Band or Wasatch District.
Well, Wasatch, I mean, they didn't start right away, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I think they did kind of start meeting like shortly after that.
Yeah.
But so when they actually officially started up in grade 4, like I didn't join them right away because I was already the pipe major of a grade 4 band. And I did, even though we didn't do a lot of competing, I had aspirations to compete in grade 4. So like I was really trying to see if we could get a competitive band ready.
Yeah.
And so even though I really admired what the band was doing, and like kind of probably would have liked to have been a part of it, but like I was fully invested in the Mount Timpanogos band and trying to see what we could go in there. So, and it wasn't, so I'm just going to fast forward a number of years because there's just, we're going too long.
Well, no, so, you know, don't feel too bad about it or anything. Either it'll be a long episode or I'll just cut it in half and we'll have 2 episodes. So.
Yeah. So I guess I won't apologize anymore.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
But this is kind of fun for me just to remember this stuff because I haven't really like sat down and talked about it for a while.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was kind of a transitional time for me too, where I kind of took a little step back. I still really loved piping, but so like by the time 2005 came around, like I was still traveling to the games. I had just been upgraded to grade 1.
Nice.
And that was kind of like a dream of my, you know, a lofty goal. And then 2006 came around and I ended up getting married that year.
Nice again.
So yeah. So
another upgrade.
Yeah. Another upgrade of life, but maybe a downgrade for my like solo piping aspirations. Like less driving and sleeping under a tree to play an MSR, you know?
Right.
And at the same time, I also, well, not right at the same time, but my first couple years of marriage, like I still piped and I was still pipe major of Timpanogos. It was kind of nice that kind of adjusting to married life that I wasn't taking on too much. And so,
of course, yeah.
And anyway, I kind of started having the early signs of what would become full-blown like focal dystonia, which you probably don't, I know you've talked about that on this show.
Yeah.
And some of the listeners are going to be familiar with that because of that. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because that's like a really dark thing, but that's something that I battled on and off for years. And let's just say like my own personal, I was kind of like in my mind, almost what kind of killed my aspirations to become like better than, like than what I ended up being,
Sure.
And because it for a while, my hands just stopped doing what I would tell them to do. And it became the most frustrating, painful thing you can ever imagine. Right.
Oh yeah.
But,
I mean, it's
right.
Having known a few people who suffer from it, it's a living nightmare for me to imagine it. I mean, my heart goes out to you. I could not be a worse thing for someone who uses their fingers for their passionate hobby to have happen.
So I will say that it didn't like totally make me stop playing. Like I could still play, but everything became much more of a challenge. And let's just say that getting better up to the next level was not really happening. And I still enjoyed piping just as much. It just kind of became this little thorn in my side. And over the years, it's kind of become a life experience of like how to accept something and how to work with what's happening in your life instead of trying to fight against something that's inevitable. And so I'm at a point now where like I still say like, I'm never going to be able to like play even as good as I used to before it happened. But like I'm a more experienced piper now. I'm more knowledgeable. I can probably set up a better sounding instrument. Certain things about my playing are probably better, but like I'll never have like the flashy fingers of just like ripping out any hornpiper jig that I want on demand, right?
Yeah.
Like that, those days are over, and like I'm totally fine with that, Like I can still keep playing. I'm playing in a grade 2 band, Like I'm getting back into some solos, like I'll just do what I can, And it was almost like blessing in disguise in a way, because like it forced me to kind of put on the brakes and maybe focus on some other areas of my life that were deficient, right?
Well, hey, and maybe your Daniel days are over, but you can still develop into more of a Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, hopefully the passion that I have for piping can rub off on some of the next young, like good players that are going to be around. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, obviously, if that was like a real ambition, then I would be teaching a lot more, but I really just don't have a lot of time for teaching. And
well, so again, seasons of life, right?
But,
that may come in the future.
But like, definitely like for the other players that are on my band, like I try to bring like a passionate attitude towards the music and towards just what we do. And I try to make it fun. And if that passion can rub off on someone else, then that's a positive thing, I think. So, So fast forward a number of years. So 2007, Wasatch went in they were just rocking it in grade 4. They were winning everything. And they went out to Maxville and then Montreal, and they ended up like winning Montreal. Like this was just kind of really rare for a band to come out of nowhere and win, right? And they ended up placing at Maxville. They didn't win Maxville, but like they were in the top 3 at least, and they won Montreal, which is the other games is like the next day or something. So
and that's the exact year that I became aware of Wasatch.
Yeah,
precisely because of that.
Yeah, and so
it was like this. There's this Utah band that's winning all over the place, and it's like, what?
Right.
What Utah band? Wait, who?
Yeah. So and then the following year, they were, or that off season, they were upgraded to grade 3. And so then a little light bulb went off in my mind. Ding. Okay, I'm the pipe major of a grade 4 band, but I can play in a grade 3 band.
There you go. Yeah.
And so I immediately joined up with them, and it was just a natural fit because it was many of, if not most of the same players that I played with, like in the grade 3 Utah. Not all of them, obviously, but like Justin and Ross and Andrew, and many of the other like kind of basically the whole core of the band did come from Utah. And that's just how it happened. And we're not going to get into the details why, and I wouldn't even be the best one to tell you.
Yeah.
But here we are. So Wasatch and District has a grade 3 band now. And so I join right up with them and start competing with them. And and then the rest is kind of history for Wasatch. I mean, I've kind of maybe had like a year or 2 off here and there, but not very much. I think like 2009, I didn't do as much for some reason. But like 2010 on, like all through the 2010s, played with Wasatch, and actually starting in 2013, I think I became the pipe sergeant for a number of years. And 2015, we were upgraded to grade 2, which that was like a long time goal of mine. Like, and we were just ecstatic. And so we've been playing in grade 2 ever since. And
so how many years until we see Wasatch break into grade 1?
I don't think that's in the cards with the current generation of players we have. And that's no knock on them. It's just that there is such a huge gap between more of like an entry to mid-level grade 2 band and breaking into grade 1. Like, it's a whole different stratosphere, right?
Yeah.
And not only of talent, because like, even if we did have the talent, it's a different mindset, right?
Yeah,
like,
there's a reason so many grade 1 bands have members from across the country.
And it's a different level of sacrifice. And
yeah.
believe me, like, in the leadership of the band, there's been many conversations over the years about like what it'll take to get to the next level. And by that, I don't even mean grade 1. I just mean like get to like a competitive, like the next level within grade 2.
Right, an improved grade 2 band.
Yeah, and at a certain point, it becomes less of a hobby. I mean, if you're in a grade 2 band, it's already more than just a hobby, right?
Right. You work in order to be able to play pipes.
Right. Yeah. But like there's still a bit of the mindset of like, it's still basically just a hobby. I mean, it's just more of a serious hobby, right?
Yeah.
Like the players in an SFU, that is not a hobby. Like they didn't just get into SFU. It was like a lifelong goal and passion and drive to get to that level. And like
parents putting them into special programs and
basically
all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
And basically spending all of your money and vacation time traveling.
Yeah.
Going to the Worlds every year. Like, and so.
Well, and then to have it sustainable, you kind of need a core of people who are making their living, if possible, from their piping, because there aren't enough hours in the day to do multiple things.
And so like, I would say like this group of Wasatch and District grade 2, and like, I think we're doing a lot with the talent that we have and with the people that we have without going full blown, like, okay, this is all you do. Like,
right. Without saying like,
cause like,
forget your family, quit your job. We're playing bagpipes.
Believe me, like the thought of a Wasatch and District grade 1 band has crossed my mind, but it is nowhere in this current generation. It's going to take like, okay, bringing up enough new players and instilling the passion and drive into them.
Well, and education, right? You got to have them playing at the level that like the level I'm playing right now as a mid 30s-year-old man.
Yeah.
I would, if I wanted to join a band like that, I needed to have been playing at this level when I was like 12 years old.
So I will say that like, I don't laugh at that idea of a Wasatch grade 1 band, but like, it's not going to be soon.
You got to be realistic about it, because if you expected it to be soon, then you would get discouraged.
It's not going to be soon.
Yeah.
But I do think, and we are attracting some good players. And I don't mean that by just like recruiting and like, hey, come to our band, all the best players. But like, if you're a good player and you want to compete at that high level, like your options are limited. Like, so if you want to play in the grade 2 band, either you're going to go travel and be a distance member, or you could play with this band that's in your backyard, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so we've had some players that have tried to do that and have done that, and we welcome them with open arms. And like, I'm not here trying to say like, okay, who's all the best players and we're going to get them into our band. Like, it's never like that at all. But it's like, we're passionate about what we do. Like we have fun, but it's a serious thing too. It's like, you come, it's a different mindset. You come, you know the music. I mean, and we play at a certain level as expected, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah. Swan was
don't get me
me
wrong. Like, we still deal with the same stuff that other bands do. Like, sometimes someone doesn't know their music, or sometimes someone's not ready. But like, the default expectation is that you are, and that you're in this band because you can be, right? And the expectation is that you are. And that is what attracts people to that band. And that's not the band that is going to be right for everybody, right? Even if you can't,
at some point it's a choice.
Like, even if you could do it, it doesn't mean it's right for you. It's like, okay, you might be talented enough to play in a grade 2 band, but like,
does your family life balance allow you to do that and go
Right,
on trips?
right.
Like, so like you have to have the right balance of ability and mindset and dedication, right?
And availability and all kinds of stuff.
But it's just like this spectrum, right? Because like the level that I'm talking about in the grade 2 Wasatch is going to be a little different than Garden Valley, but like that same difference is going to be evident between Wasatch and like a super competitive grade 2 band or a grade 1 band, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be like, so we're always looking up, like, okay, how do we get players that are like more passionate, more serious, more committed? What do we, because like most bands that are even at grade 2 level will meet more than once a week, and we're still kind of we're still in like the once a week mode, and we try to be efficient and do as much as we can, and we do band weekends where like periodically, COVID kind of, we haven't done it since then, but like during the off season, like once a month, we will try to get together for a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday rehearsal. And cause like we have had some out of town players like come in, and that helps them. Like, they can just kind of come in and just have a concentrated rehearsal if they're not there, like for 3 straight days. Right?
Yeah. Like a band camp.
Yeah. And those are usually good, but then also it's tricky to balance, because like you do kind of have people giving a little bit of pushback even then, because it's like, that's my date night and that's my family day. And, it's just like, it's hard.
Right. Hard. And that's that balance you're talking about, right?
I'm not like calling anyone out, because
right.
like I feel the same thing, pressure with I have 4 kids. Like I have a wife, Friday night's our date night. It's like, I have to make sure that I'm making sure all these other aspects of my life are healthy. Right.
Yes. I've had that experience so many times where like I've started to put too much into piping specifically, and it makes other aspects of my life suffer. And so then you have to go, okay, now wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I don't have to throw piping entirely out the window, right. But I'm putting too much into it. I need to scale back to something manageable so that I can have some balance here.
And I've had to learn that over the years, because as passionate as I've explained to you, like how passionate I was about piping, like I kind of have to rein that back in, and that's why it was fun for me to talk about those experiences, because like it brought up feelings of like how I felt about it then, that I can't really afford to feel that same way now. Even though I love it, like I kind of have to rein it in, because like I can't go out and do all those things I used to. I can't be, because I have to be a dad. I have to work a job. I have to be a husband, like. And there's been many times where like it was like, for me, it's like either all or nothing. And so I would just go full bore, and then I would get to the point where like a breaking point where like, okay, like I just have to stop. And
right.
And like, there's been a few times where like I've contemplated it, and actually like a couple of years ago, I actually did have to take a little break from the band in Wasatch, and it had nothing to do with Wasatch or my passion for playing. Well, I will say that like I was in a bit of a burnt out, but I've been through those before, right? Mm-hmm. It was more so just like some life situations, and I won't get into the details, but just different issues that were going on that needed more focus, and I couldn't afford to devote that time. But the whole time that I was gone, I definitely knew I was going to go back. It was just a matter of when, not if, right?
Yeah.
Like, because like it felt like this void in my life, and it was healthy for me at that time. But I always knew that like when the time was right, I'll go back, and do it. And I did, and felt, because that's like, it's like, what I'm talking about. You've been part of bands. It's like, it's not just the music. It's like your people. It's your tribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your tribe.
Yeah.
It's like it's your like second family, right? And yeah, you have issues and stuff just like families, but like at the same time, you feel like that's where you belong, right?
Yeah, and so if you cut it out, you do miss it. It does leave a void.
Yeah. And it's not just the music, right? Like I didn't miss playing an MSR.
Right. Nobody's ever said, I sure wish I could play an MSR right now.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I love a good MSR, but like that's not what like kept me up at night, like missing the band. It was like, oh, I miss going on these trips. I miss these friends. I miss doing social things. I miss being part of humans want to be part of a tribe, right? Like they want to be part of a group that is a like-minded people working towards goals, And so I know you probably have to go here pretty soon, but I don't,
so you just kind of have to find that balance. And I'm hopefully I feel good about the balance that I found now. Like I can still, at a certain point, I did have to kind of step away from being the pipe major of the Timpanogos. And that was back in like 2010. I just couldn't, by that time I was, married for a number of years, getting ready to start a family and stuff. And I just couldn't do it all anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was like out of school into my career, and it just became too much. And like, I probably could have done it if I really dedicated myself to it, but like, I just didn't really have the passion to do like the non-competitive stuff as much. Like for me, like I'm always driven by like trying to get better and trying to like hearing the bands and the players that inspire you, and like trying to be part of a group of like-minded people that like really want to play better and push to get better. Right. And so like, I felt like I always want to be part of a group that has that mindset. And for me, like I found Wasatch, and it was just a perfect fit. And I love that group, and I love all the experiences I had with Timpanogos too. And I love the people there. But it was, I just couldn't, I had to kind of choose, like, do I want to do more? Yeah. Do I want to go more of like the casual kind of like gigging piper,
which works for some folks.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
but like for me,
it,
that wasn't going to keep me driven. And so I kind of had to go the other route, and I don't regret it at all. I mean, I've loved every bit of it.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes down to it, I think personally, it's actually that more casual gigging style that works well for me. So I can totally understand that, like, they both work for everybody at different times. They work together. It's good to have a little bit of both, but all of us kind of jive with one thing a little more than the other, and that's fine. That's kind of do what works. It's better to do what works well for you and keep doing it than to try to do what doesn't work well for you and have it break down.
And I've done that too, and I think for me, like dialing, like maybe the whole vocal dystonia thing and having to dial back the solos, that was probably like actually good in hindsight, looking back, just for like my balance. Like I could go in and learn the music for a band. Like I've always been able to learn music like really easily. So like, it's never really been an issue, and not time consuming, So like being part of a band is basically just like one night a week. And I'm not saying you don't practice, you still practice,
of course,
but like you could practice anything. Like, you know what I mean? I'm still gonna play even if I'm not in a band. So like being part of the band essentially means like, okay, I'm going to a rehearsal once a week, and I'm really focused during that time, the band's getting better, and then I'm still practicing during the week. But I don't really have time for like much solos and stuff. Like especially like having babies, your little kids and stuff. You're always, you know how it is. You're always so tired. And
absolutely.
Like there's times when I tried to get back into it, and I would just burn myself out quickly. But I quickly learned find that balance,
Hopefully it's on my end. My main worry is just my laptop, man. My laptop is let's see, it's like 8 years old now. It's got all kinds of problems, and right now one of the main problems is that it gets real hot real fast, and that'll affect just about everything. And so,
well, fortunately, like I usually just use my work laptop for. I don't need to use it for a lot of stuff. I can't download like a lot of extra software on it. I'm not, for security reasons and stuff, but just for like basic use, word processing, internet, just connecting that. I just use my work computer. But like my home computer, like my wife's laptop, it was like 8 years old, and we bought a new one, and then like literally a week later it was stolen out of our car.
Oh.
And then we bought another one, and then literally just 2 days ago, my 2-year-old dumped a full glass of milk on it.
And no.
We have had the worst luck with laptops the last couple months.
Yeah, it's almost enough to make you just give up on the whole enterprise. No more computers. We don't even need them.
Fortunately, the last one, at least, we'll be able to replace it under the warranty or whatever. But the stolen one was a lost cause.
Yeah, for sure. Well, great computer for somebody out there.
Yeah, that's kind of how I looked at it. Just computer karma.
That's right.
Maybe I'll get a steal a computer one day.
That's right. Someday when you steal a computer, it'll be a really good one. It'll be brand new.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean to make a hard pivot necessarily from what we had been talking about, but I'm curious. I don't think I've asked you before. What is it that you do for a living? Kind of your full-time thing.
Yeah, well, I'm it's one of those jobs that every time I say it, everyone goes, "Oh, you do that? Why do you do that?" No, I'm just kidding. No, it's good. I have an accounting degree, and so I work for the state of Utah, and so I'm actually an auditor, and so I don't audit like individual income taxes like your tax return or anything. I'm not going to come after you, but a lot of businesses, some of the lesser known taxes like fuel taxes, and we look at I mostly look at fuel taxes and that type of stuff, but mixed in there with a lot of other types of taxes that you don't really think about, like insurance premium taxes, beer taxes, tobacco taxes. Real exciting stuff, so you can see why I need an outlet.
If it makes you feel any better, I spent a lot of time in like quality and safety inspections, like insurance risk mitigation inspections, that kind of stuff. It's you're in one of those similar positions where it's like, well, everybody hates me, but they're nice to me to my face because they have to be.
Yeah, that's why I like doing a lot of bagpiping gigs and stuff, because like afterwards, everyone always they're like in tears. They're so grateful. They tell me that I'm amazing, even if I'm not. And I'm like, okay, I need that because of my other job. I don't get that as much.
Yeah, and you know that even if you don't hear it in your other job, people are cussing you out as soon as you leave, right? Like as soon as they hang up the phone, like, this guy.
I mean, it's funny. I apologize for my job jokingly, when I tell people what I do, but really it fits my, it fits how my mind works. And it's so like, I wouldn't have been doing it for so long if it didn't kind of click with me. And so like, I really don't mind it at all. I mean, it's a good job. I like it. And it's been a good organization to work for, and good, good people. And now that I get to telework, it's really nice, you know. So I during the summers I live right by the Provo Canyon, and so I'll just go. I have this little kind of secret spot by the river where no one ever really goes, and I have like a little TV tray, my little camping chair, and I just put my laptop there, and I have a hot spot, and I can do all my work, and I just hear the river. It's super, super nice.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And my laptop battery usually lasts about half a day, so then usually I'll go to my office for the second half. But if I really want to, I could go. There's like a pavilion like in the little park that I can go like just sit there and charge my battery. But usually I end up just doing about half a day. And but I'll tell you what, that is much better than commuting up to Salt Lake every day.
Oh, hey man, that's awesome.
So and the nice thing that was kind of started with COVID, but then they kind of looked at it real carefully, and I think they were in the process of wanting to kind of get that in place to offer that to the state employees anyway, in as many divisions as could make it work. And so the new governor is he's kind of gung-ho about teleworking, because he commuted from like, where was it, Fairview or somewhere. I mean, he's kind of a rural boy, so he kind of wants to open up more potential jobs to people in those communities and eliminate the commuting. So it makes sense. I mean, the technology's all there and stuff. So
yeah, I've been working based from home for like 10 years now, and I
nice.
for a very brief period about a year ago, for like 6 months between other jobs, I had to do a job where I had to commute, and man, especially after being away from it, I did catch up on some podcasts. I mean, that's when I like binge listened to 2 years worth of Chanter Rant, which might have broken my brain a little bit, but so there are perks for almost everything. But
you know what? There's been so many times where I've, after listening to like a particular Chanter Rant episode, where I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to listen to these guys anymore. but then like I'm going through my list, and inevitably like a week later, I'm like, oh, new episode, ding, 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 and it's like one of those things where like, okay, there's just not a lot of bagpiping content out there, and they're funny. I mean, they are funny.
Yeah.
I like, they're actually getting a lot better with like their interviews and and bringing in like interesting people.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
can you believe
and
how
so,
you think about those first like, especially the first like leading up to episode 100, how like what a difference it is with like how much more sophisticated
exactly
the
like
is.
if you can get through the first year or whatever. I mean,
well,
like,
first of all, if you can get through the first year, there's something wrong with you, right?
well, there really is. I mean, but I think that it just goes to show that like, you know, bagpipers are starved for like content, and I mean, a lot of people like podcasts, and it's like, okay, if it has to do about bagpiping, I mean, but the thing of it is they have made it as inappropriate as it sometimes is. It is entertaining, and
so entertaining.
They have a formula
that
they stick to, and it's the inappropriate humor that kind of keeps people listening, and I think it just
can't say it doesn't work. I mean,
and so like you can say as much as you want that like, oh, that's inappropriate, but because you're listening to it, it just kind of shows that we're all messed up. So.
That's right. Yeah.
No, I think they do. I think they do a good job. I mean,
I love that.
Like show. I'm sure that's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
To do it week after week after week so consistently, and I'll give them credit for keeping it up. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. I was talking to another bagpipe podcaster just a little while ago. Are you familiar with the Way Too Twag Bagpipe Power? It's like bagpipes in history. It's very cool. It's a very cool podcast. But
wait, I love bagpipe history, but I've never heard of this.
Oh man, I'll send you a link.
What is it? I'm gonna send me a link. I'm gonna write it down because that sounds like. I mean, I'm a piping nerd, and if you haven't figured that out, I love talking about all the history and.
Oh yeah, you would love this podcast. It really is.
What is it called?
It's called Way Too Twag. It's the way that he spells it. It's an Ojibwa word, spelled WETOOTWAAG, which actually I think is an alternate spelling from what it's actually supposed to be. But
can you just send me the link?
Yeah, I'll just send you a link.
If I ever make a podcast, I think it's going to be my goal, like to make it something that someone can remember and spell easily.
That's actually one of the things I asked him about. He kind of got stuck with it, and so he's like, well, I guess this is what it is now, you know. But yeah, really cool guy. But yeah, I was talking to him about exactly that, just that you know, like when I started this podcast, part of my thinking was, if I do a conversation based, I don't have to do nearly as much work because I'm sitting down with another person. So like, you know, for your episode, Johnny, you're doing the work, you know, because you're the subject matter. So I can just be like, hey, tell me about yourself, you know, and that's pretty low. It's a pretty low bar for like preparation that I have to do. And then also, if I set it up to be every other week, then I can build in breaks for myself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where this guy,
I'll tell you what,
John, like the Jeremy Kingsbury, who does the Way Too Twag, his podcast format is like he does a lot of research, presents the information, and plays tunes and records them as well. It's a lot of work, and it makes for an amazing show. But man, it's a lot of work. And I think it's a similar thing with the Chanter guys. Like, they have to do a lot of work, and it's weekly. I think it gets to be a lot.
I can't believe I've never heard of that. I like to think I'm fairly tuned into piping, to the piping world, but you know, I am kind of disconnected from social media, and so I guess I'm really not as connected as I would like to.
Oh, it's a great podcast, and actually, by the time this interview with you posts, an interview with Jeremy will have posted, so by then you'll get to heard from him on this show as well. But yeah, it's a really good podcast, and one of the cool things is that he actually has been around for a long time, and so he has a really good backlog. It's so if you want some content, here's a treasure trove. You know, it's great.
I can't believe I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, I'll put a link to it. I'll put a link to that show in the show notes for this one as well, just because let's see, you know, like time warp, right? By the time this one posts, there will have been an interview with him, so there will be links there. But in case somebody listens to this one, didn't hear that one, right? I'll just put links everywhere. Anyway,
that sounds good. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check it out.
Yeah. So
I like, you know, I do like all the piping podcasts. You know, I don't. Honestly, I don't listen to all the Chanter episodes. I don't listen to all of any of them. Like, but whenever I'm in the mood, like I you know, a Big Rab, I like him. I didn't really like him as much when he was just talking to himself, like for an hour about like Northern Ireland piping updates. And,
it's true that sometimes it got kind of local news heavy for somebody. International, right?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was like he's still nice to listen to. I mean, it's still a good job, but I really started liking him a lot more when he would bring in, you know, like the piping people, like doing the interviews.
Yeah,
like
the interviews are great.
You know, like Richard Park. I mean, like all the people he's brought in, and that to me is more interesting. You know,
tell me. I think I honestly I hear Rab's voice in the back of my head so so often doing this. I want to see if I can approximate it. If I lean away from the microphone, tell me if you recognize this at all as being like Big Rab. I'm going to lean away from the mic and I go, hooray! Did that sound like Rab?
Yeah. No, I love it. He's like, and in the, the novice juvenile drum majors, blah, 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 won the first prize. A legend.
Yeah. How many Rabisms have
I will say that
he
is the most enthusiastic.
He is, yeah. That's part of the joy of listening to him, for sure.
Like normally I'm like, okay, like who won the grade 1 contest at the major, and like I'll talk about that till the cows come home. But like, and I think, I'm pretty nerdy just for doing that, but he'll talk about like who won like the novice juvenile, and who came in fifth.
Grade 4B.
He'll came in like 5th place, and he's like, man, their stress, like their tone was so nice, and like they've come a long way, and I'm like, man, that is just like passion, like okay, I was just at, the Payson Scottish Festival, and that's like me sitting and just listening to like every grade 5 band and just like taking notes and just being, and don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I did listen to him, but like,
well, especially
but
this year,
it's
right?
like the level of passion for like every single level and just anyone who's like participating in the art, it's just like, he's just as excited for like the grade 4 as he is for the profession. I mean, the grade 1 is. Yeah. I will give him that. He's very passionate,
passionate and enthusiastic for sure.
Yeah, but sometimes if I'm having a bad day, it kind of like makes me mad. I'm like, man, stop being so enthusiastic about everything.
Why do you have to be so darn positive?
Can't you just like rant about something?
And then you turn over to chanter. Yeah. That's right. Maybe that's why those two shows like go so well hand in hand. They're like the yin and yang of the bagpiping world.
They are so different, but I'm glad that they like talk about each other and get on each other's shows and stuff, because they are so opposite, but it's cool like how he just loves their show, and they always make fun of everyone.
The first piece of Chanterant merchandise that I ever purchased, and I have purchased a few, was their Rabby the Pooh
that's funny
t-shirt.
I've seen that. Yeah. That's clever.
Yeah. Well, hey, tell me some more about you, Johnny. I want to know some of these fun questions, like if money were no object, what piece of bagpiping equipment, kit, or like trips or whatever, what bagpiping related thing would you spend that money on? If you had just like, blank check.
Well, I'll be honest, like I don't really lust after a lot of piping equipment. I mean, like my pipes that I have, like I'm just kind of like head over heels in love with them, and I'm not
tell me about your current setup.
I love like lusting after other pipes and stuff, but like I'm kind of a minimalist, and so as far as like having a bunch of sets of pipes, I really don't have a desire to have more than one like really nice set. I mean, over the years I will acquire another set, and then I'll quickly just go back down to one, and so I don't know. I mean, I just really enjoy the set, and I play a set of nails, and I just really like them. I mean, they just
show off.
No,
I'm just joking.
No, I don't know. I mean,
nails are great.
Like we have a big we've had a dialogue in Wasatch for many years, like little rivalries between pipe brands and stuff, and like every now and then I'll be standing on the side with someone else who's playing a set of nails. I'm like, man, this little corner of the band sounds just so good. Like we don't even have to play good just because we're playing nails. No, but that's not to say that I wouldn't like anything. Like if money was no object, well, and let's say time as well, I definitely think I would get like a full set of Highland pipes with all the regulators and everything, and then just dedicate, an hour a day to learn those, because there's just something that's just so cool about that sound. Like actually, I was talking about Joe. He plays the Highland pipes, and he has a full set. I believe it might be one of the only, if not the only, full set, because I mean in Utah, because
right.
There's a lot of people that have half sets, which are just the 3 drones, and then 3/4 sets, which have some of the regulators, but not all of them. And I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong because I really don't.
I mean,
know.
well,
Like a full set would have.
It might be the
full
blind,
set of
As far as I know, you're saying it right. Yes.
Right, and for years I've always, and it's not real. I mean, money is not totally the barrier because, like, I mean, yeah, they're very expensive, so obviously that's a bit of a hurdle to get, like. I probably wouldn't start out with a full set, but that's not as much of a barrier as just the time because honestly, just to dedicate the amount of time that I do to Highland piping, which is not as much as I used to, but like that, I feel, balanced usually with that.
You can
and
kind
just
of
to add a whole nother instrument like that. So it's more so the time that intimidates me.
Yeah. I can understand
but
that. I often lament the fact that we only have 24 hours in a day. Like, wouldn't it be great? Or
Right.
really the best thing would be if you could pause time for everybody else, then you could carve out some extra time for yourself.
Yeah. But no, I'm content with just sticking with the Highland pipes for now. And who knows, maybe one day when my kids are kind of grown. I mean, I think that that's something I could transition over to if you maintain the dexterity of your technique from your Highland piping, like you should be able to transition over fairly well. I know it's completely different technique and fingering and everything, but that's just kind of what I tell myself to give myself hope that one day I'll learn.
Oh, I think that's reasonable. I mean, there's no getting around the fact that like everybody who I've ever known who picked up pipes who had previously played like clarinet or saxophone or oboe or something else that, it may not be exactly the same combinations of fingers for exactly the same notes, but it is a similar set of sort of dexterous tasks to be done by individual fingers. And, so it does make sense that there'd be some transfer.
And like transitioning away from like a competitive, like a higher grade competitive environment where every grace note matters, like going over to uilleann pipes where, I mean, I'm not saying technique's not important, but like if you're just sitting around in a circle playing a bunch of fun jigs, like with no pressure, with no judge breathing down your neck, I mean, then like if you miss some technique, like as long as you're on rhythm and stuff, I mean, I'm sure no one's going to really care, right?
Yeah, that is part of the fun thing that comes with sort of the freedom of playing even just Scottish small pipes, which are definitely, less costly and less of a knowledge barrier. A lot of people are, a lot of Highland pipers like to get a set of small pipes. Just that, I mean, aside from, I guess the truth is that like uilleann pipes with their larger range and everything, like a lot of times, if you're playing off sheet music, a lot of times it might be just the same sheet music as the fiddler is playing off of anyway. But if you get a book of small pipe music, often the embellishments aren't even written in there just because it's, you just kind of play what feels good in terms of, where you're going to put a grace note or a doubling or whatever.
Right. No, and that's another thing too. I would love to get kind of back into small piping. I've never had a full official set of small pipes, but I did used to have, for many years, I had a set of Walsh shuttle pipes. Which were an A, which basically, I mean, music-wise, the same thing, right? You can just sit in with small pipes. I mean, if they're in the same key and it's the same fingering, you can play the same tunes. And I used to love that. And when I was in the Mount Timpanogos band, Joe had a set of shuttle pipes. I'm sure he still does, but like we would always incorporate those into any show that we did. Where we would put the Highland pipes down and we'd bring out the small pipes, and maybe someone would have a guitar or a whistle or something. We would do something a little different. But now he's got the full Irish group going too alongside.
Yeah,
a lot of the shows they do, they'll have the pipes, and then he'll bring out his Irish band too, and it's a good system he has. I mean, so the band, I mean, the pipe band does have an Irish flair to it too. Like they play a lot of Irish tunes, and so it kind of goes really well with the full Irish Ceilidh group. So. No, but if money was no object, okay, I would probably still take a look at some other pipes, but I'll just say I'm very happy with the set of pipes that I have, and actually what I would spend the money on probably would be just, I would love to go to piping live like every year if I could. I mean, when we went with Wasatch, just the whole week of the Worlds, it was just so cool. I mean, just the epicenter of the piping world with one of my coolest experiences, I'm sorry, can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, was just going to just a rehearsal for Field Marshal Montgomery. I mean, like, you're just surrounded by the best piping in the world, and there's not a lot of replacement for that inspiration that you can get. Like, just hearing these bands, I mean, like, all in one place, you know, for that whole week. I mean, on the day they're in one place, but like throughout the week, I mean, they're practicing. You just go around and just go hear all these different bands rehearsing, and then you go, you know, for lunchtime they have like, oh, you know, Roddy McLeod's doing an hour recital, you know, and I mean, like, just all the types of things that you would never have the opportunity to do here. I mean, just amazing stuff. And so, you know, I definitely would go back to Scotland a lot, as much as I could, and I don't know, I think that would be cool. I know that it's such a massive undertaking for the band to go, and I know that we've talked about going back, but it's just, and I think one day we will, it's just such a massive financial commitment too, but I would like to find a group of people maybe to go over as a small group, not as a band to compete, but just to soak in the whole week-long experience, right? Just maybe just get
piping tourism,
get a bunch of guys, you know, and we can just rent like one room.
Bunch of guys being dudes.
Yeah, or, you know, I'm not excluding the girls. I was just thinking, like, you know, cramming a bunch of guys in like a single room or something, you know.
Right.
And so, like, you know, if girls are more than welcome to, you know, probably get their own room and just go over there and just soak in a bunch of piping for the week. I mean, to me, that was far more meaningful than competing at the Worlds. I mean, if I ever get to the point where I'm playing with a group that's like actually trying to win it, then that might be different. But like for us, I mean, we went over there with the intentions to try to do as well as we could.
Of course, as well as you could. But maybe recognizing that, it was kind of the opportunity for the experience.
We didn't,
right?
we didn't end up doing quite as well as we thought, but going into it, we were definitely focused, and we thought we thought we had a chance to do well. So, but that wasn't for me, the most meaningful thing was like just the experience of being in Scotland, just immersing yourself in everything. Like, you know, I remember going over to the College of Piping and listening. I mean, I did listen to a recital from Gordon Walker. I mean, we went like literally right outside of our dorms. We were staying at like the University of, what was it, Strathclyde? I can't remember. It's just right there. You've heard of like the Lord Todd's Bar, like challenge recital, like that. Literally right there, like a stone's throw from where we were, staying. I mean.
I imagine it being something like, if you've ever gone like a few years competing, at every Scottish festival, and then like you have a year where you're out for whatever reason, you have a kid or something, and so you go to a Scottish festival, but as a spectator, and you're just like walking around in jeans and a t-shirt and just taking it in, how much fun that can be, just to be like just there to enjoy it. I imagine that being like that times a million, to be able to just go to the Worlds and just hang out for those couple of weeks of piping live and all that kind of stuff.
And Actually, I did listen to the interview you had with Eric, and he was talking about some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, he was
like
there
too, the silver cap competition. I mean, literally. I mean, I don't even know if I can name off all the players. You had Gordon Walker, Willie McCallum, Jack Lee, Stuart Little, Alex Gandy. I mean, just the list goes on and on. I mean, just to hear Angus McCall, anyone who's anyone like. Just hearing them like in person, I mean, I honestly say we are a bit spoiled with content like with YouTube and stuff now, but there is something about just being there and hearing it, soaking it in a person.
Yeah, of course.
Especially the bands, because the bands, like that sound that is just recreated from, like, for example, like Field Marshal, like you can't experience that even with the best headphones and the best recording. And some of these recordings out there, they're pretty good. Like Drone Chorus does an amazing job. I mean, he does get good audio, but there's nothing like just standing 20 feet away from Field
Right,
Marshal.
of course. Yeah.
I mean, that legendary sound, I mean, just gives you goosebumps,
Well, yeah, and I think that it's probably true for really any musical performance, but maybe in a special way bagpipes, just because a pipe band, man, It's not even just the pipes, the big loud drums and everything. It's a space filling kind of experience. And so if you're in the same space as it, it's going to resonate with your whole self in a way that you can't recreate over headphones.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of my favorite experiences are just, we don't go to, the Wasatch doesn't go up to Enumclaw every year, but we do try to make it a habit to go up to Enumclaw. And then several years, like our tents have literally been pitched right next to SFU. And so like they're circling up for their like little rehearsal,
and you're just sitting in camp chairs with
like
popcorn
literally their
them.
their circle is coming all the way up to the very edge of our tent.
Oh, man.
And so like we're just sitting there in our little camp chairs listening like literally 2 feet away from SFU,
You're like, we didn't have to pay admission for this, look at this.
Yeah. And then you get a kind of so rather than just listen, I like to just kind of see, okay, what are they doing? Like, what's their process? Like, what can I learn? Like, how are they tuning their chanters? How are they tuning their drones? Like, you kind of just pick up those little things. Like, how are they doing it? Every band has a slightly different process, right?
You ever just put your pipes on your shoulder and just kind of work your way into a spot in the circle? Wait to see if they notice.
I wish, Like, actually, like, a couple years ago, right before the season that was right before COVID, one of our pipers, Jeff Henderson, got the experience he was over in Scotland at one of the majors, and somehow he made a connection and he got to stand in with Field Marshal and just play like Green Hills or something. And it was like a dream come true for him. And like, and that, I think it was actually reported by like Big Rab or something. There was a video and I'm like, oh man, lucky dog. Like if I could just play Green Hills with Field Marshal, like,
well, now this guy's walking around, he can say, I played with Field Marshal Montgomery. How many people can say that?
Okay, and I'll be like, okay, now can I just play the hard drive medley with you guys?
Right,
too?
yeah.
I'll just play high A the whole time.
That's right, yeah. Can I just drone while you guys play it?
Yeah.
Even that, I would be too terrified to even do that. Like, oh, my drones will throw off the balance.
Oh yeah.
My subpar droning.
No.
Well, now it's a frivolous question, Johnny, but I do ask everybody how they feel about pineapple on pizza. You got anything to say about that?
I like it. I'm a vegetarian, so like anything that is not meat, I pretty much have to accept on my pizza.
Yeah, your options become limited, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been doing vegetarianism?
About a decade.
Wow, that's a long time, man.
I never really liked meat even before then. Like I was never a meat eater.
Mm-hmm.
And so, about 10 years ago, I made the switch, and like I really don't miss it at all. But I'll tell you what I have done the last few years is I've tried to go full plant-based, which is kind of like the next step up, so that you're avoiding dairy, kind of like a vegan diet. But then that one's been a little harder for me because like I'm not tempted to eat meat at all. Like I really don't crave it. Like I don't, it's usually not hard to find vegetarian options, but it's a little bit harder to do the full vegan thing especially if your family is not. So like, so like I've done my best, but I haven't. So like I do say I try to eat a fully plant-based diet, but I won't claim to be like a full vegan, at least by not the strictest definition.
Well, I mean, what few dietary choices I've had to make in my life really it just comes down to lactose intolerance. Unfortunately, I used to tolerate it just fine, but dag nabbit, not anymore. And I can sympathize with you just because like. Even that small adjustment, it can become difficult, going out to eat and stuff like that. You're making a much larger adjustment. I'm sure that does become a challenge at times.
Right. And I will say that, like, every single restaurant would have something vegetarian. And most restaurants would have something vegan or that could be made vegan, but, like, not all. So, so, like, the vegan thing is more challenging. The vegetarian thing is pretty much something you can do out anywhere. Like, it does, I mean, if you're going to, like a barbecue restaurant or something.
Right, it says right on the label, right?
I mean,
a
like,
meat place, right?
It reminds me of like an episode of The Simpsons where like Marge is allergic to fish and they go to an all-you-can-eat fish restaurant, and she's like, is there anything on your menu that doesn't contain fish? the waiter's like, no. He's like, does the bread contain fish? Yes. I'll just have some water. Excellent choice. I think I brought some.
That's the one where they finally get kicked out of the all-you-can-eat place because Homer's eating too much, and then they drive around looking for another, and then they go fishing.
Then he finds Lionel Hutz to do the lawsuit.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like, this is the most blatant, false advertising since the movie The Never-Ending Story.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, I love The Simpsons.
Me too.
I'll tell you what, like, I grew up with The Simpsons, and that is just a part of me that and then like when they got onto streaming all the episodes on Disney Plus, I'll tell you what, I binged watched all the classic years. I really don't care much to watch like the last 20 years or so, but the 90s, like the 90s Simpsons will always be part of me. And
I'm with you there, man.
I will always be able to go back and watch any of those early seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I wasn't sure if I was going to do Disney Plus, but as soon as I realized that The Simpsons would be on there, that day we had it. And I'm watching through right now, like while I work, because since I've watched all of, especially the early years, so many times, right? Like this was our family ritual when I was a kid. Yeah. Every Sunday night we'd go downstairs and sit on the couch and watch The Simpsons. And my dad would record episodes just onto a VHS tape so that we could watch The Simpsons anytime we wanted. Which is that illegal? I don't know. Maybe it was, but it was just for private viewing at home. But
like, who didn't do that?
Right,
I mean,
right, yeah.
If you grew up in that era, I mean, it's funny. Like, I grew up with where most of my friends' moms, growing up in a very conservative area, obviously, like most of my friends' moms probably didn't even know much about The Simpsons, but they just banned their kids from watching it. So
yes, it was like
so. Like if you grew up,
show, right?
Yeah, I mean, you probably heard that too. Like, we're not allowed to watch The Simpsons.
Oh yeah, I got some of that shame from my friends.
It's
like,
really,
you watch that?
It's really tame.
Especially those early years, man. Like every episode has like some beautiful moral about honesty or family togetherness or something.
I mean, I'm the person I am today because of I'm just joking. but like the funny
I was
thing
raised
is,
on
like,
TV and I turned out TV.
The funny thing is like my dad didn't really care for it, not because any moral reasons or anything. He just didn't really like cartoons and stuff.
Yeah.
But my mom, she would record them all on a tape, like your dad, and so like we had full tapes of Simpsons. And, oh my gosh, I will say that the one show that my mom didn't care for was, of course, the one that I gravitated towards during my rebellious teenage years. Mm-hmm. So Beavis and Butthead.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, come on. It is funny. And
so good.
And I grew up, I was a teenager of the 90s, and so, like, it was, like, the perfect era. Like, when they came out, like, I was Beavis and Butthead's age, basically.
Oh, yeah. So, I spent a lot of time with my shirt pulled up on my head and saying stuff about cornholio.
Exactly.
A lot of time. Yeah.
And somehow it started coming up in my YouTube feed recently, and so I've been kind of, like, reliving some of that.
Yeah.
And, oh, my gosh. And so I don't really let my kids watch it, but they kind of caught on to what I was watching, and so they were begging me to tell me about them because they just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
And so like I think they're calling him now Beanus and Butthead or something. I don't know, but like, and so like every time like they come over and I'm watching something and then like I turn it off because maybe I don't want them to see what I'm watching or whatever. They're like, "Are you watching Beanus and Butthead again?"
So you went from your parents, from having to hide it from your parents to having to hide it from your kids.
I know. And I'm like, okay, I'm not like a prude, but I do think that Beavis and Butthead is probably not appropriate for my 6-year-old right now.
Well, yeah, like it's true. Like I feel the same way. Like I want to be a cool dad, like I want to be cool and stuff, right? But at the same time, like there are certain things in here that like my kids will repeat because they don't understand them, and if they repeat them at school, it might not go great with the teachers. So like
right?
Maybe I'll be kind of careful.
I am happy though that I have started to turn my kids onto The Simpsons and not really like we haven't really sat down and started watching full episodes, but I will show them like funniest Homer moment clips on YouTube, and like they will beg me now, Dad, can we watch Simpsons clips, please? Yeah. And it's like, and so
and then a little tear glistens in the corner of your eye.
Exactly,
yes.
exactly.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure, man.
Sorry, I mean, people are like, "What? Is this a bagpiping podcast?"
Right?
What are we talking about?
No. Let's see how we're gonna pull this back. Is there something we can do with groundskeeper?
Well, I guess
Willie to bring it back?
I guess at least we're not talking about, this at least it's not the same kind of sidetrack that they do on the channel.
Right, I was gonna say it's not like we brought in a dominatrix to talk with us or put on a shot collar or something. So
yeah, although if you want to get more listeners,
hey, it's a strategy. It's one way to do it. Nope, I've got a state accountant on my show. That's what's gonna pull him in.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. If your listenership doesn't double after this, after you have a state auditor,
right?
What is gonna bring up
your
listenership?
You're actually the second auditor that I've had on the show. So.
Oh yeah, who is the other one?
Yeah, if you haven't listened to Robert Baxter's episode yet, that's a really good episode, and he was an auditor for like the CIA for a while, like international.
Well, no,
I think he killed people.
I don't. Oh, okay. Well, I haven't had to kill anyone yet, but
right.
But our threshold is like if you owe more than $1 million, then we get to kill you.
That's the official rules.
I'm just kidding.
Them's the rules.
Oh, I wasn't
sorry.
I wasn't supposed to say that.
Yeah, my computer just exploded.
No.
Well, hey man, give me. Let's pull together some kind of graceful landing for this. Now, just so you know, this is probably going to set a record for the longest episode, especially because
I apologize.
Don't apologize. It's totally
no one's
cool.
gonna. I don't even think anyone's gonna listen to this far. But like, I'm so sorry. But like, I'm not really thinking about the time. This is the first podcast I've ever done, and I just think it's fun to chat with anyone who plays bagpipes.
Well, and that is the whole point of this show. So don't even apologize, because that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And if it runs a little long, folks can hit the pause button and come back to it later. Not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna be fine. But
so
what can we say?
I can still apologize.
But what's something beautiful that we could do to kind of bring this together? Like maybe. You tell me. If this isn't good, you reject it and we'll think of something else. But I'm thinking like you've had some experiences. You've been playing pipes for a while. You've had the experience of leaving it, coming back, changing bands, playing in cool places, hearing other cool people play. You've got the dystonia thing going on. Like it's a complex picture at this point. And so I'm curious, like maybe if you were talking to one of your kids, or maybe that's too close to home, maybe just somebody who's thinking about learning to play bagpipes, who's thinking about entering this world. And you have just a few minutes to either encourage them or discourage that. Discourage, is that a word? Discourage? Yeah. Encourage or discourage them to do it. What do you say to them? Like, how would you sell this experience to somebody?
Gosh. That's a good question. I don't know how I could really put that together into like a neat package, because there's just so many different angles that you can take on it. But I will say that for the couple years when I was kind of taking a step back, and don't get me wrong, I still played here and there, but like when I stepped back from like being majorly involved in pipe bands and, like I just didn't feel like myself. Like, and I would tell that to my wife all the time. I'm like, I have to go back because it's just like a part of me. Like, and I mean, you do have cool experiences, but like, I think like we're human beings and we like to be part of like-minded, like we like to form groups with like-minded people. And I just think the bagpiping world is just such a cool place, because there's no way that I would have met as many different kinds of people from all walks of life, with this one interest that kind of brings us together. But, and I will say that is a big part of it. Like, cause is like, if I were to say I was going to play an MSR again, I mean, I probably wouldn't shed too many tears, as much as I love a good MSR, but when I was taking the break, like the thing that really kept me thinking about it was just like, I miss my friends. I miss going on band trips. I miss the dinners after the games where we're just being ridiculous and, all the funny jokes and just the camaraderie. And I miss the teamwork of like working really hard for a common goal and, all these different things. I mean, so like, I think that aspect of it, just finding a place of belonging, just of, and then the pipes themselves, of course. I think like if you're if you're drawn to the pipes, you're drawn to the pipes, and you're kind of just stuck. But I will say that the last few years, I've kind of gravitated into doing more of the solo gigs and that type of thing. And the reason why I maybe call this a midlife crisis or whatever, but in my day job, which we just talked about, it's a great job and I like it and whatever, but like, what kind of life fulfillment do I get? Like, there's been many times when I thought about, okay, why am I'm doing this every day. Like, how is this bettering my life? And what kind of lasting fulfillment am I getting from it? I mean, like, do I need that from my day job? Like, those types of questions. Like, do I need to pursue something else? But then I started pursuing the gigs more because I just noticed every single time I did one. I mean, and you do a lot of the gigs, so you understand. I mean, when you have grown big tough men, like, just basically weeping, like, because of the emotional effect that you were able to give them, like, because of what you do. And I'm talking about Amazing Grace, Going Home, Danny Boy. I mean, I'm not talking about John Morrison of Ascent House. So it's kind of like, you don't need to be a great piper to be able to give this to someone else. Like, I will say, like, be in tune, have good, I mean, play well, but to see this and to, to get that experience week after week, doing these gigs. I mean, just to see, like, to hear, like, the thank you responses that they send you, like, the next day, like, of how meaningful it was to the family. This is exactly what my fill in the blank wanted, like, and thank you so much for doing this. Like, I couldn't have imagined it any better, and it was exactly what I wanted, and like, just to see the emotional effect that it has on people. And so I say, well, that kind of has filled a void of fulfillment. And I don't know if that's egotistical or whatever, but, like, it's just, I don't mean it to be, but, like, I like being able to serve others in that way, to give them something meaningful. And with the pipes, we're able to touch people and to do that. And that, I think other instruments can do that too, because music is very powerful. But I think,
of course,
like a pipe played well does that to, like, almost a next level that I can't imagine many other instruments being able to do. And, like, being able to do that and give that experience to other people, I think that, to me, I kind of separate that from the whole other competitive aspect of it, which I love too. Like, I love pursuing that, but I say, even if that wasn't there, like, I would still carry on playing, because number one, I give myself, I'm not saying I'm a great player, but like if those, you play for those moments where, like, even you're just in your basement and everything locks into tune, and afterwards when you're done, you're like, did I do that?
It's like a mystical experience.
Yeah,
right?
And it doesn't happen all the time, because, like, there's other days where you're like, okay, I'm gonna list my pipes, I'm done. I'm just kidding. No, not really, but like.
But
there are times. There are days. Okay, there's going to be days where you wonder, like, why am I doing this? Because this is so hard. And like, there's some days when nothing works.
Yeah.
Frustrating. But, like, the more you practice at it, like, if you have, the better you get. Like, hopefully you'll have more of those days where you're like, man, this is just so enjoyable. And the more you play, better you get, the more you enjoy it. And I think that's what Andrew from the dojo says, right? It's kind of like the basis of his philosophy,
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, like, I will always keep playing. I mean, even if I'm not doing the competitive thing and stuff, because number one, like, I'll have those moments where I'll, just in my basement or whatever, just playing where, you're just in that trance, in that zone where you're just transported, and it's just such a cool experience, a cool sound. It's a cool instrument. It's cool that we get to take part in it, but then also, kind of the effect that it has on others too is just like icing on the cake for me, because that, that does kind of fill a void kind of in my life, as far as a pursuit that is giving someone else, something positive, right?
Yes.
And so, if that makes sense, like,
it does make sense.
In my day job, I don't necessarily get that. No matter if I'm the auditor of the year, no one's going to be thanking me.
Yeah, auditor of the year, that kind of means you were the biggest jerk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You got the biggest target on your back.
No, I love it, and it's great. I hope that so far, I haven't like pushed it on my kids or anything, but if I can, if they can kind of catch on to that and gain an interest, I would love to make it a family thing.
Oh yeah, I'm hoping for that as well.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I've got 4 kids, so I got 4 chances.
Yep.